to get on. I was just checking my email to see. Trying to promote her to a panelist. To get on.
I know last time she had a phone and something going at this, I think, didn't she?
Yeah, I think she was on her phone. I actually tried to call her a minute or so ago because the meeting wasn't coming up. But then it came up just as I was trying to call, so.
Yeah.
Here's Lisa.
Okay. Oh, excuse me.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we
Sorry
can see
about
your
that.
hand too.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like, let me in. Let me in.
Yeah, we can see hand, but no face. No face.
I clicked to let you in several times, and then it kept saying you declined it. So I don't know what that was.
Yeah, I don't know. And you know what? I got up because I heard the phone ringing, Cindy, and I went to get it. And then
You
I
know
think
what, Lisa,
timed
it
out.
wasn't letting me in. It said it was waiting for it to
me
start, and
too.
it was like a minute to 7.
That was me.
So I was calling you to see if you were in.
Yeah.
I joined just a couple minutes late. Didn't realize I was blocking people.
So are we
So
live
Lisa,
right now?
We are live, so we can start the meeting anytime we're ready now.
How many people do we have in the audience
We have currently 11 attendees
Wow.
besides us or including us?
besides us.
Oh, okay, good. Well, then I think that Pete, if you want to call us to order.
So Lisa, I don't know if you know, Cindy's going to be the scribe, so you're off the hook.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Lisa, you did it last week, right?
Yeah, but I haven't done them. I have to
Okay.
do it. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll do it.
So at 7:04, we'll call the meeting to order. We have full attendance. We'll go right into the presentation of the draft. We had talked about a quick PowerPoint that Lee's going to go over, and then we'll bring it out. So Lee, we'll hand it over to you.
All right, so I'll tee it off with a 5-minute presentation to bring the members of the public up to date on what we've been doing. So let's see, next slide, maybe. There we go. This is on the public website. It's the list of all the committee members. And I imagine we'll probably end up making this short presentation included with the minutes of tonight's meeting, so everybody will have a copy of it if they want it. Of note, we have as ex officio non-voting members, the Chief of Police and the Director of the Southborough Board of Health, who have both been very helpful to the committee in our deliberations. The charge of the committee, as you can see on the public website, was we were supposed to collect previous draft versions, which we did, review the experience of other towns, which you'll find in some of our past meetings, have public forums, of which this is the second public forum. The third public forum, which we did in between, was actually the survey, which I will mention in a minute. We need to clearly define the purpose and enforcement that will address the current issues of noise in the town of Southborough, and that we needed to consider and evaluate various approaches to ameliorating the problems of noise in the town of Southborough. The plan for this forum tonight is for me to give this overview of the draft bylaw, and then I'll turn it back over to our chair and vice chair to go through each section of the proposed bylaw and ask for you, the public's comments, so that we can further refine what we're going to actually end up proposing to the town meeting. It should be emphasized that what you see here is a draft, and it is, it is open for modification, and that is truly the reason why we've asked you to come and to join us. The rationale for the bylaw is fairly easy. It's to ensure an environment free from excessive sound for the residents, and the comment for that is that excessive sound may jeopardize the health and welfare of our citizens and degrade their quality of life. We did a survey, and we were actually quite pleased to have gotten 473 respondents. About a 50-50 split was on the need for a noise bylaw. There have been previous attempts, the most recent, I believe, was 2017, and they've not been successful, in part because it was felt that they were too complicated. So there was a request to us to try to consider a more minimalist approach. We found that even in trying to come up with a minimalist approach, we still ended up with at least 4 pages long, unless we use really small type. The top types of noise disturbances, this is drawn from the survey that people complained of, was the noise from leaf blowers, other landscaping activities, vehicles and motorcycles, construction activity, and trash pickup and delivery drop-offs. There was a lot of concern. There was a question on this about whether or not we should include decibel ratings as part of the ability to evaluate and enforce whether somebody is violating. There were a number of issues that came up with this. The first was that just pure decibel levels doesn't really explain the reality of how annoying noise either is or is not. A constant level of noise, may grow into a background that you can just, sort of like tune out. Whereas you can have episodic noise, like a sharp banging sound, that may not really register on the decibel meter for a long enough period of time for anybody to use it from an enforcement point of view, but that may be equally irritating or more irritating than other kinds of noise. Second was adding decibels into it would have created a far more complex document. We looked at a number of other towns that how they looked at things, and discovered that in order to use decibels in their document, they needed to have like probably an extra 2 pages to be able to separate things out. And finally, the police department requested more flexibility than simply a sound level meter measurement. So for that reason, we didn't include a decibel rating, although if there was a groundswell from the participants, then we would go back and we would consider that. So this is the outline of what our proposed bylaw looks like. It starts off with a statement of why we're there. It goes into some proposed standards, and we have looked at contracted work being separate from homeowners' work. That is, if you were doing an addition and you hired somebody to do the addition, they would have different noise hour limits compared to you if you were doing the work yourself. And the rationale for that had to do with mostly that, many homeowners may only have, evenings and weekends to work on things, so that they might wish to not be subject to, as stringent a noise level as a contractor who can be there every day. We also looked at other kinds of exterior noises, things, for example, like, barking dogs and the like. There's a section here on business and industrial noise. We do not regulate that. That is regulated at the state level. However, after a long discussion, and you're free to sort of like wade through our previous meetings, you'll see that the reason we included the section was because if somebody were to go to the town of Southborough's website and try to find who to call to complain about business or industrial noise, they won't find it on the website. So by us including it as a section of the proposed bylaw, they will see very clearly, that they can talk to the police department, and the Board of Health will be able to help them. And then this final slide shows that when it goes on to talk about prohibited activities, exemptions, those things that aren't included, like, for example, clean up after an emergency, what the violations and proposed penalties would be, how enforcement will happen, a few definitions. We noted that this question about severability is a legal issue, and we were waiting for input from the town on this. What this basically says is that if for any reason any section of the bylaw were to be found to not be legal with respect to the Mass General laws or state law or federal laws, that the voiding one section of this would not void the entire bylaw. And that's, it may or may not be needed. We'll have the lawyers are looking at that. And then finally, we had a question that for you that the committee was totally divided on about how to address, should there be a difference between construction noise standards and contracted work? And one of the problems is that there are two kinds of residential construction, as I understand it, that happen in the town. One requires a approval by the planning board for like a subdivision, and it has hours that let's say no Sundays, no holidays, and Saturday work must end by 2 p.m. Whereas the contracted work that we have here lets you go later on Saturdays. And the other thing is that there are other houses that can be constructed, for example, as a single house or as a tear down and replacement. Those are called approval not required, or ANR houses, and they would not be subject to the planning board's restrictions on when construction occurred. So we've possibly proposed for you to discuss whether or not we should have separate, all construction of houses should have the same as the planning board's requirement. And I think the final thing that you don't see in the slide here had to do with the use of leaf blowers. So the question was whether we should be more restrictive about the leaf blowers during the period of time that does not include the spring cleanup and the fall cleanup. So like, the summers and the winters, essentially, the middle of the summer, when mostly the leaf blowers are used in order to blow grass clippings around. So those are some of the issues that, as Pete brings up each individual section, that we're looking for your comment on. And so I thank you for the opportunity to give you this presentation.
Thank you, Lee. That was great. Tim, can you bring up the draft?
Yep.
And then if you're comfortable, we'll have you kind of go through it a little bit, section by section.
Okay, so I have the draft up here.
Can I just ask for the minutes? If we're going to open the public forum, how many people are there?
Okay, so yeah, let's go through the attendees list. And do we need to make a motion to officially start the public forums out of this, Pete? Do you know if we need to?
I think we already did. We already did at least what presentation was the greeting for the public forum. I mean, okay. we announced it on, it's been advertised that it started at 7. So
okay.
It's part of the meeting. We don't have to have an election to open it. No, it's just a meeting.
So on the attendee list right now, we have Adam, I apologize if I pronounce anybody's name wrong. Adam Fanuth, Andrew Pfaff, Debbie Demiria, Doris Cahill, Jeff Fong, Jennifer Cunningham, Karen Muggeridge, Kevin Miller, Mimi Luttrell, Sam Stivers, somebody by the name of S. Heidi, Sonia Barak, Stephen Levine, and I believe Tim Litt.
Okay, I didn't get all the names, but I don't think I need them. I was just looking for a number.
We have 14 attendees right now.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
So I think the best way to do this is to talk about a section, kind of give a brief overview of it, and then we can open it up to any comments on that section, and we'll keep the comments to that one specific section we're on at a time, so we can keep our notes in order to get everybody's thoughts by the end. Is that a fair way to go, Pete?
Yep, yep.
Okay. So we're opening up with section number 1, with scope. So essentially, I'm assuming that everybody here has had an opportunity to read this. So I won't read it verbatim. Essentially, we just wanted to kind of get the context of what this bylaw is supposed to help cover within the town. So just lay out that information in kind of a concise way for the purpose of this particular need of legislation. So unless anybody else has anything to add, I'll open it up to comments. Okay, so I see Adam has his hand up. Adam, if you could state your name and address and any comments about the scope section here.
Sure. Adam Faniff, 150 Parkerville Road, Southborough, resident, 44 years. I haven't really dived particularly deep into all of the text of this. Honestly, the presentation by Lee was the first time I heard kind of a broad stroke about it, but a generalized comment from someone who is a contractor and a homeowner. If when I built my own home in 2004, I had a legal business registered with the town, yet I still built my own home at 24 years old. Nights, weekends, holidays, all of the things I was allowed to do. If I was also registered as a legal contractor at that time, would I have been in violation because there's a differential between me building my own home and me being a contractor? Also, the town of Southborough still recognizes at-home businesses. We have many small landscapers who work out of their own homes. If these people have the ability to work in a town where they do not have a noise ordinance, for example, Ashland, Westboro, Hopkinton, Marlborough, and Framingham, all of which abut our community and do not have noise ordinance that I'm aware of, are they allowed to leave their home in commercial vehicles and start their businesses and go to work? It's a concern of mine. Also, have we taken into consideration that someone who is on a border town, say working up against living on the south side of town, up against Hopkinton, where they don't have a similar ordinance to the best of my ability. If you live on Bridge Street and everyone behind you lives in Hopkinton and they're allowed to use their leaf blowers and have contractors in their yards, does it really do any good for those people? Same thing who border Hopkinton and Framingham and Marlborough and Ashland and Westboro. Other than hindering the ability of small businesses to work in our community, what are we actually proving by limiting the number of workable hours in a week? Also, are we going to recognize legal holidays by the state or legal holidays by the schools? Because now we're taking off school days for religious holidays we've never taken off before. So if the schools aren't working because of a religious holiday that we now recognize that we never recognized before, are landscapers allowed to work in the town of Southborough? Or do those people lose another day of income because we choose it to be convenient for our ears in whatever measure? But seeing as though we're not actually using decibel meters, are we really following the science on how loud things are? Because if we refuse to measure the caliber of noise and we're only going to use public opinion, are we really making a difference? At this time, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to just speak briefly on that? Is everybody?
I'd say go respond to it. I think that's reasonable.
So Adam, we defined contractor work as work being paid. So if you're a contractor and you live at your house and you're not getting paid, you can work. You're a homeowner under our definition. So you could work with the extended hours as the homeowner hours. So you'd fall into that category. So you'd be all set. We did look at surrounding towns. We wanted to make it so people weren't gonna come to Southborough to make noise when other towns had bylaws preventing it. So we're right on line with our surrounding towns as far as that goes. We had to, this is a balance between, what you're talking about. You're a contractor working, if you want to work 7 days a week, we get that, but we also want to be able to have some residents have some peace. So we did a balancing act, and there was quite a bit of discussion on the hours, and we came up with something that we think both sides of the fence can live with. Certainly, we can look at the holidays, as you mentioned. There was some discussion, federal holidays or whatever, but we are trying to go with kind of the standard around. We looked at all the surrounding towns. Westboro has something similar. They don't necessarily call it a noise bylaw, but they have work hours, contracted work, and homeowners work. Ashland has a very extensive noise bylaw. They have meters. We've looked at all the surrounding towns and ones that emulate the town of Southborough in size and population as well and makeup. So I hopefully, maybe if you look at the rest of the document, we're going to go through each section. If you have a quick question, hopefully we've addressed, I think, or at least taken into consideration a lot of the points that you have just brought up.
So we have some more hands raised, but before we go to them, I think we can get derailed pretty quickly if we don't stick to the particular section that we're discussing. We will get to every section if we do it this way. So with those guys with the hands raised, I'm more than happy to take it, but if we could try to limit it towards the scope, that would be much appreciated. So,
yeah, I think exactly. If we can, give the document some time so we can go through it and explain it first. We may get to your question before, at that time. So
and we can always take all extra comments at the end for anything we would have missed. So, Karen, you still have your hand up, so I'm going to come over with you. So, Karen Muggeridge.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for serving on this committee. This is more of a basic premise, and I think it does apply to this part. I think it's important to remember that the noise bylaw is written for people who have a problem with noise. The fact that there was 50%, or I don't remember the exact number, of people within the community that did have a significant issue with noise, those are the people that this bylaw should be written for. People who don't have a problem, maybe they, have a house on 5 acres of land. Not that their concerns shouldn't be considered, but this bylaw is not for them. So I think we need to keep that in mind and in the forefront. We're not looking at 50% of the people that have a problem, 50% that don't. We're looking at 100% who do have a problem. One of my concerns is leaf blowing, so I know I'll wait until addressing that at a later time. I respect what the committee has done as far as differentiating between homeowner and contracted work. And I think it seems like you did a reasonable job on that. I just want to say noise is noise. It doesn't matter who generates it. If it's by a homeowner, if you're want to having a cookout on your deck at 7 o'clock and you don't have contractors making noise, but your neighbor is, that really doesn't make any difference. So I'm not presenting a solution to what you have put forth here. I'm acknowledging that, you have done a good and commendable job, but just raising some issues of concern. Thank you.
thank you. Tim, why don't we go right to this? Do you have anybody else with their hand up, Tim?
Not at the moment. So I think we can move towards standards. So the standards section here is laid out as it's kind of written. There's contracted work noise standards, homeowner work noise standards, and then exterior noise standards. So the contracted work noise standards are trying to do a balance on weekdays and Saturdays to cover all the needs of when a typical paid contractor would be working on somebody's house. And again, this only applies to noise. So if they're hand brushing your house and they're painting your house, but with a brush and not making noise, it's allowed on a Sunday. This is only as for what kind of noisy activities they would be doing to give it some level of reasonableness. Homeowners have slightly different hours, a little bit more openness. Sundays are also included. And again, this is for the noisier activities that are associated with doing actual work. So mowing your yard, for example, might fall into this category. Exterior noise standards are about just general disturbance of the peace. So it's about just keeping noise within a reasonable level in general. So if anybody else from the committee has anything to add on this section before we open it up for comment.
Tim, I just want to add under contracted work noise, that would include landscapers as well as construction, et cetera. So I think you would just talk to house building, doing stuff on your house.
Yeah, correct. It'd be
Or-
if it makes noise or is noisy that it would bleed over your property line, your neighbors would hear it. Those are the types of activities. So it's not limited to that. I just use painting your house as an example. If you're painting it with a brush, that could happen on a Sunday. It's not really a noisy activity, and that you could be paying somebody. So perfect.
And we really, as a concept, always had in mind that neighbors would talk to their neighbors. So if they had somebody that they could identify who was creating the noise as opposed to coming from further away, but the noise carrying to their property line, that you could hopefully be able to go to your neighbor and say, hey, look, I'm having like people over. Is it possible you could do this another time before trying to get enforcement? So the variability, well, you understand what I'm saying. Go on.
Perfect. So I'll open it up to comment here. Andrew, I see you've had your hand up first, so I'll go to you.
Thanks, Zip. Thanks, everybody. First, I want to just commend everybody for all the hard work they did on this. This is great work. My only comment is on the legal holidays. Looking at some other towns, they do define it, which I would suggest, because there are some legal holidays that are really, kind of historically work holidays. And, and so some towns define the legal holidays as New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and then Christmas Day. And then some towns include Christmas Eve, which I think would be good. And again, it's okay. You have federal, which also wouldn't include Patriots Day, which is a mass one. But historically, Martin Luther King Day, Patriots Day, Juneteenth, Columbus Day, President's Day, and Veterans Day are usually days that like landscapers would work. So the other holidays would be ones where their employees would be off. But some of these like, Patriots Day or Columbus Day are days where, historically, landscapers and construction companies would work if they were able to. So, and I think it would make sense for those holidays.
Andrew, I believe we missed your address.
Oh, sorry, 50 Oak Hill Road.
And just for the sake of this discussion, we do have legal holiday currently defined as any United States federally approved day.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's in the document, just to.
Yeah. So I think it would basically be all the ones I just read, except for Christmas Eve as a day off and Patriots Day as a day on, because that Patriots Day is not a federal holiday.
Perfect.
So I know like my landscaper will come on Columbus Day, for instance.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to move to, I believe, Heidi. If you could say your name and address, please.
Yep. So my name is Samantha Heidi. I'm at 191B Woodland Road. And I think, for this section and guess the whole document, I do have, several comments, but mostly related to the fact that we're splitting so much between homeowner work noise and contracted work noise. And it is somewhat discriminatory against contracted work. I mean, you may be a homeowner that doesn't have the time or works weekends that may contract somebody who comes on a Saturday and a Sunday. And, vice versa, same thing with the legal holidays. I would prefer, I know we have below, federally listed. I would prefer a full listing of those, but for this section, my main concern is that if you are a homeowner and you are contracting out to someone because you don't have the time and you're unable to do things within those hours, you're further restricted on the time they can come to your home to help you do work. And I think that leads to, a lot of problems where one person may be able to get stuff done at 9 p.m. as a homeowner on a Saturday, but if I'm working or someone else is and we have a contractor come, they're restricted, and it really limits what you can get done on your home just because you're not doing it yourself. It's also, quite frankly, unfair to contractors and to small businesses working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So Samantha, I'm just curious, is this work that you would be having done inside your house, or where the noise may not be even heard because it's being done inside? Or are you concerned with a contractor doing stuff outside of your house where the noise could travel? And that you feel that you have to be there to have that work done?
Yeah, I mean, we had some trees that, quite frankly, were dead and we needed taken down this year. We worked with a small contractor to do it, and the days that he happened to be able to come were over a weekend. We had the flexibility where he could come back and finish the job on a Sunday, something that I don't have the tools for, can't do myself. And under this bylaw would have been restricted to either having to wait another week, schedule in between, finishing half the project simply because it was a contractor doing something I can't do. So it would have been exterior noise. I mean, that was a chainsaw outside for a few hours on a Sunday, and it was middle of the day, but the way this is currently written, they wouldn't have been permitted to do any of that work.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. So we have Stephen Levine. Bring him over. Stephen, name and address, please.
Stephen Levine, 9 Valley Road. And my issue is the fact that I live in a neighborhood where in the summer and into the fall, it's not just one contractor you hear, it's several contractors continually. So that, and these are landscapers, and that come back on a schedule, and they come back Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and they're always, it seems like they're always there. And so I think that it's a question of balancing equities. It's one thing for a homeowner to have the right to hire a contractor, but it's another for a homeowner to be free from constant noise. And I think that's the issue. The other thing I would mention is that I think one of the issues that is unique or different now than it has been in the past is that because of the pandemic, and what I think will continue, is a lot more people are working at home and are privy to this noise and find it objectionable. In my discussion with my neighbors, that is an issue, is that you are bombarded by noise. It's not just one contractor, but it's a contractor on the left, in front, on right, and it becomes cacophony, and it seems like it's all day long. which is fine during the week. I mean, I can understand that, but on weekends and Sundays, it becomes, there's no such appreciation as quiet enjoyment of your home because everyone's hired a contractor. And so, yeah, there's a right of the contractor to make a living, but there's also the right of the homeowner to get some peace and quiet and enjoy his property.
So can I ask a question? So Stephen, are you suggesting that there shouldn't be any like contractor noise on the weekends?
Well, the way it's written, where it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturday, is something that, you could go 5%, I don't have a problem with necessarily. I definitely have a problem on Sundays and legal holidays.
So Stephen, would you think that what we have there is acceptable then?
Yes,
Okay.
but
Oh,
I'm also
okay.
and one of the things I'm reacting to is that, this issue of being fair to the contractors. That's fine, but the thing is that they are going to have to accommodate this law, and they're going to have to find the time to do it within the constraint. That doesn't mean they won't be able to earn a living or do it. It's just that they have to live within confines that I think are the same in, as you said, in bordering towns. Just that, I have had confrontations with contractors on a Sunday at 7 a.m. who tell me, "Oh, we have to work." Well, I have to sleep. My children have to sleep. And I think that's the equities we're dealing with now. So 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on a Saturday, is acceptable. Anytime on Sunday to me is not acceptable because there's got to be some period where you have extended periods of just no noise.
Okay, Stephen, thank you very much for that. Do we have anybody else, Tim?
Yep, we have Debbie Demiria.
Deb, yep, go ahead.
Hi there, this is Debbie Demiria, 58 Flag Road. I actually very much appreciate what the previous speaker just mentioned. I also like and want to say no contracted work on Sundays and legal holidays, however legal holidays are defined. I think, I really align with that, and I really thank you guys for that. I wanted to ask you about the Saturday hours. I noticed on the survey, I'm not sure you gathered any information from people with the way that the question was asked. I think it was asked, something about like, what type of hours would you like on Saturday, 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 8 to 7, that sort of thing. And I'm just wondering if you, would consider earlier times on Saturday. And I've mentioned it before, the permitting boards have traditionally used earlier hours on Sunday, something more along like 8 to 2 p.m. And I just wanted to see if, that's something that you would consider, or if you've even reached out to anybody on any of the permitting boards to see what kind of experience they've had with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Deb. We did talk about that extensively, and we went back and forth, and there was some give and take on both sides. My thought was, very often, people, you might get rained out during the week and you got to make it up on a Saturday. So, you want to try and get a full day in, but you don't want to go, we don't want people going too late. So we thought the 6 o'clock was reasonable. People might be, it's dinner time and you could have some, quiet dinner with your family. But, on the other hand, people got to get some work done too. So we did have a tough balance. And we just kind of agreed on the 6 we want this to pass as well. So we don't want opposition on either side. So we were hoping that was kind of going to be a mid-fair, prudent way to go. But that is, it is open for discussion. We could change it, but that is how we got to that time.
Pete, just to add to that 2 to 6 p.m. difference, the planning board's hours for building permits was the 2 p.m. cutoff that we were seeing. Right. This isn't only building permits. This is things like contractors, construction. landscaping crews and things of that nature, not limited to only construction activity. And we did discuss that point, and we felt as a team that the later hour covered more items, and that was part of the consensus that the team came to, was the later hour allowed for different things that the planning board wasn't specifically overseeing. So just to that.
May I comment, please?
Yep, go ahead, Lisa.
So as part of this discussion, I'm just looking at the survey results. I remember this discussion. There was definitely a lot of back and forth. I don't think we came to a unanimous agreement on this. So I know that the 4, 5, and 6 p.m. end time on Saturdays for paid contractors were more towards 4, 5, and 6 p.m. as opposed to 6, 7, or 8 or later. So, that is something we certainly could look at, but we had to, as a committee, we were trying to bring something together for the proposal, and we took a vote on it. And the majority of the vote went to that 6 o'clock time period, but it really wasn't based on what the survey showed us or what the community might be interested in. And so we really, if other people would like to see that time change, speak up tonight. And that's all I have to comment on. Thank you.
Anybody else, Tim, on that section?
Yep, looks like we got 2 hands up in the audience, so I'm going to bring over Sonia. So Sonia, name and address, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Hi, my name is Sonia Bearhuck, and I'm the grounds manager at St. Mark's School. And I'm just curious if we could add to the discussion the question of us doing snow removal. So our overnight hours, we're quite often working outside of these hours. And I know we make noise, but we consider it an emergency situation, having our walkways cleared for all kinds of emergency vehicles and also emergency student issues, getting people to health services back and forth across the campus. So can this be addressed? It's not addressed in your bylaws, I noticed.
So Sonia, if I may add, we're going to get to a section that covers snow removal. It might be more appropriate if we bring you back in then to see if we missed anything when we get to that section.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. So I believe we have one more hand up. Peter, name and address, please. Peter, you there?
Peter Levine, 27 Parkerville Road.
Hi, Peter.
Hi. Okay, so I've got a statement I'd like to read without interruption.
Peter, Goodney, I don't want statements. We need to go through this, get feedback. Peter, if you wait until the end, you can make your statement.
And that's why I start this out saying I'd like to read my comments without an interruption. I'm providing you with public feedback, which is what this hearing is all about.
Is it related to the standards?
Thank you.
Peter, it has to be related to what we're talking about. You can't just come in.
Yeah,
and
you're
take the
talking
meeting
about,
Standard.
when I joined this meeting, someone was talking about landscapers and their noise. Okay.
Yep.
Since this hearing is open to the public and I am a member of that public, I'd like to share some thoughts and observations regarding this draft version of a potential noise bylaw for Southborough. This is not a discussion. I'm presenting my views and very likely those with whom I have correspondence regarding the points I will be making. You may recall that among the items listed in the charge for the noise bylaw ad hoc committee is one which states a requirement to obtain input from the community. Committee members were advised by certain members of the select board that previous noise bylaw versions considered for Southborough were not to be used as templates for this 2022 version. I would draw attention to the December 2021 survey and the input received illustrating approximately 2/3 of the respondents are concerned with the level of noise in their Southborough neighborhoods. Of the comments received, the majority had to do with noise from leaf blowers. This suggests the issue is widespread throughout Southborough. Unfortunately, when performing a superficial review of the results, several of the committee members stated that two-third number was, quote, statistically insignificant, end quote. I do not believe those people believe the noxious, disruptive leaf blower noises to which they are subject a minimum of 9 months a year is statistically insignificant. I have observed leaf blower use over the last several years, and it begins in mid-March and proceeds unabated through mid-December. This is noise pollution at its worst. I would remind the listeners the times of the year leaf blowers, by their very definition, are needed are from mid-October for fall cleanup until the snow flies, possibly again in the spring, terminating at the latest by May 1st. Unfortunately, the current draft version only includes convoluted language merely suggesting a limit on the number of these devices and does not address the issue. I've heard some argument about clumps of grass when wet grass is cut. Has everyone forgot a basic premise about lawn care? That is, don't mow when the grass is wet. Leaving the issue of leaf blowers, let's turn our attention to the scope of this draft. One of the criticisms leveled at the Billerica noise bylaw presented at the town meeting in the spring of 2021, and again repeatedly in noise bylaw committee meetings, was that the language of the bylaw was too complex, despite the fact that Billerica voters approved of it a dozen years ago. What I read in the draft version is also, quote, too complex, end quote, while at the same time, quote, too simple, end quote. A number of items are listed in the draft concerning sources of noise for which nobody has expressed concern. Look at the survey results. Did you receive feedback regarding people yelling, noises from outside patrons at restaurants, trucks idling? This is already covered by existing mass statutes. The same for exhaust system sound levels. The draft is either nitpicking for issues that don't exist in Southborough, or it contains redundancies wholly unneeded. At the same time, the draft version ignores and overlooks those issues your public has brought to your attention and you've so far chosen to ignore. Remember your charge to obtain community input. Your community has told you it's not just sound in and of itself that's the issue. It's the volume or level of sound that is the problem. As a committee, you have unwisely chosen to not to address the issue, the level of sound, again, ignoring what your community is telling you. What possible solutions does that leave if you're going to refuse to measure sound levels? What it leaves is restricting the use of certain noxious, disruptive, noise-producing devices. Minimizing the use of these devices will go a long way to addressing the concerns of the community. While we're on the subject
Peter,
I'm almost done.
I'm going to give you one more minute and then we're going to cut you off.
Yep,
Okay?
I'm almost done. And while we're on the subject of the draft version, I highly recommend you choose a person in your group who has at least a basic understanding of the English language and sentence construction. Some of the wording in that document sounds like Pinocchio trying to explain lies in the Shrek movie. I've provided one solution for gas-powered leaf blowers above. It is up to your committee to find solutions for the other disruptive noises. Remember, this isn't about you and your wants. It's about what your community wants. And your community has spoken through these public hearings and in the survey distributed a couple of months ago. Giving serious consideration to input provided outside of your committee echo chamber is critical to the success of developing a noise bylaw the community is telling you it wants. Thank you. Good night.
Do you have any specific comment on the standard section?
No, he had his comment. He spoke long enough. He timed it. He's got plenty. Let's go to anybody else do we have on that, Tim?
Yes, Jennifer Cunningham has her hand up. Jennifer, address and name, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Jennifer Cunningham. I'm at 10 Parkerville Road. And I would just like to say that I greatly appreciate what Peter just brought forth to this committee. I was going to wait to address it, if you want me to do that, to the section of the leaf blowers.
Yeah, we kind of want to follow
Yeah.
the document.
Yep, I can do that. Again, I would like to just say, you know, the section or the scope of this, again, is to be ensured an environment free from excessive sound. And that specific section really needs to be clarified, because as it's written in terms of that section 8, it's not really clear. I mean, the amount of noise and the noise levels and what we're being inundated here in this town of Southborough has to be addressed.
Okay, Jennifer, this is Cindy. I'm trying to keep the minutes here.
Yeah.
Are we waiting on your comments till we get to the leaf blower section?
Yes,
Or
yes.
I'm not sure how to capture your comments.
Yes, I can wait till then.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, so that was the last hand we have on this particular section.
Next section.
So next section is business and industrial noise. This section is already outlined, or I should say, this is just an informational section. There's nothing restrictive here beyond what the Mass General Law already has and what opportunities the Board of Health has to enforce those laws. This is just an informational section we included to help any general public with questions or concerns about this to know what the procedures are and what is being used in those situations. So again, this is just purely informational. We have Debbie Demiria.
Hi again, Debbie Demiria, 58 Flag Road. So this section did change because I know that you had at one time put in the 10 decibels above ambient for the daytime, and then you had kind of opined on what should the nighttime regulation be, which would be more restrictive than the CMR. And you had come up with 6 decibels. And so I see that's not in this version. And I just wanted to, first wanted to ask you about that. I also just wanted to clarify that noise is regulated by the state and it's not limited to industrial. So I've had this conversation with Heather Alker, and I know that she's put this section together. But it's not, I just want to let you know, it's not 100% accurate. So you could have noise coming from another area of town that's not industrial. For example, there could be something going on at the school, something could be going on at my neighbor's house, and that is regulated by this section of Mass General Law. So there's a little bit of a misnomer here. Because there's nothing, as far as I know, in the law that talks about industrial noise, but I think we're talking about it's coming from an industrial source. So while I appreciate it's in here, I would like to see lower nighttime limits, which is, part of conversation that you've had, because many of us, live close to either Route 9 or the Pike, a lot of us in town. And so, as I think one of your callers said, this is a bylaw for people who are, who have issues with noise. This is to help us. And these sections of town are, industrial business. They're very close to the residential sections. And noise travels. We can't keep it contained only in one, zoning area, for example. So one is, I guess I'd like to see that this isn't called industrial noise. I'm somewhat happy with this section, but can you explain why we can't go a little lower in the evening? I actually thought you took a vote on it the night that I was following to get to 6 decibels over ambient at night. Thank you.
I'm happy to address that.
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
Talk about it. Great. So Deb, I know that you were at that meeting, and I think we we definitely discussed it and that we wanted to go to Heather to get some feedback. Heather did come in. She talked a little bit about the nighttime hours. As a board, we weren't sure what to do, but that night, Heather said that night, those nighttime hours and the lower decibel, the lower decibel, lower than the 10 decibels. It was something that the board could discuss and vote on. But I'm also thinking that if that was something that we wanted to write into the noise bylaw, because that's what the community wanted, I think that's something that we could consider. Certainly we could bring this back to Heather again and see what we could do about those nighttime hours.
Lisa, you said the board and the committee, so.
Sorry, committee. I'm
Yeah.
saying the committee.
I just want to differentiate you, the Board of Health
Yes.
could theoretically do their own extra level outside of what the bylaw says. So I did want, that was one of the points we did discuss, that the Board of Health has some more autonomy to pass their own rules regarding this and nighttime activity. The stance of the committee from that night, or the majority, I should say, the committee from that night was we didn't want to put anything in that wasn't part of the greater laws, even though towns can make things more restrictive. The majority of the committee did not feel comfortable making anything more restrictive. And that's why those nighttime hours were omitted from this draft.
That's correct. But if we find that, if there's enough of the community out there, residents that would like to see that included, it is certainly something that we could consider. And you could go to the Board of Health to ask them to create that level on their own.
Debbie, I see you still have your hand up. Do you have anything else you'd like to add to this for comment?
I think so. So yeah, I would be interested to see lower nighttime decibels. I'm a little confused on the process. Maybe because of the board and the committee, does the Board of Health need to take a vote on this policy then? Because, this is, here's the thing, is from my perspective, this is the noise bylaw for the town. So it's going to be one bylaw. It will be the one that, as I mentioned previously, the permitting boards would use, that the police will use, that the Board of Health will use. So we're trying to make this a one size fit all kind of thing. And so I can appreciate that this section really just sort of mimics what's in the law. But we're trying to, and I think what we're doing here is we're trying to tailor it to the needs of Southborough. And I think that's what we're doing in every other section. And so I would ask that we, consider that for this section too. And I personally liked alignment with something that's been used before. That was the noise model bylaw. And they use 5 decibels. I know you guys talked about 6, but I'd be a fan of lowering that so that it's tailored to Southborough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other ones, Tim, on that section?
Yeah, we have 2 more. Let's see, Stephen Levine has his hand up.
Yes, I just want to comment that I live on the Framingham border, and a lot of industrial noise that we get at night comes from Framingham, from the New York Avenue Industrial Park, Santa Fe, which it's sometimes an issue. It's not really significant, but in the summer with the windows open, it can be. The thing that I want to comment is that given that this is a state regulation, I think it's the first time I've seen a remedy for someone to say, okay, how do we get Framingham to deal with an issue like this? And if the liaison is the Southborough Board of Health, because Southborough residents are being affected, I think that's a positive. By referring to that in here, it basically informs residents that they do have a remedy without having to go Framingham. So I just want to make that comment that I think it's irrespective of if we had a particular decibel rating for Southborough only. It's good to have a kind of a reference for where you can go to get non-Southborough noises that affect Southborough residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Samantha Heidi has her hand up.
Hi, my name is Amit. I'm actually Samantha's husband, but same address, 191B Woodland.
I'm sorry, Mr. Heidi, I didn't get your first name.
It's Amit, A-M-I-T.
Thank you.
I just had a question about the previous two comments. I agree with the need for decibel rating. I think you guys will talk to later about how to enforce this and like if you're going to measure it or not. But how can you guys comment on your thoughts about limiting noise from the Pike, it being a state road, as well as limiting noise from another town, Framingham, that being an issue, or Route 9 being an issue? I don't know what the legality of that would be, and if you guys have looked into that. I noticed in the survey responses, a lot of people complained about the Pike and like 495, and that just seems like something that's incredibly unenforceable. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are about that. And also, if someone could give me a reference, I just did a quick Google, but 6 decibels I think is super quiet. Like a conversation at 3 feet, I'm looking up is 60 decibels. So like, I'm just trying to figure out what that rating is like.
Good. So I'll give a, sorry, Lisa, I'll give a brief comment on what 6 decibels means in terms of sound. So when you have a sound source, if you have a change of decibels that is between 6 and 10 dB, depending on what frequency it is considered doubling how loud that source would be. So that is just in this particular section, we were talking about above ambient level, and that 6 dB would be above ambient. So essentially it would get twice as loud within the area, would be the decibel change. That's what the 6 dB would be referring to. And it was the line that we were talking about a second ago is the changing at the nighttime level of a change of 6 dB above ambient level, essentially doubling how loud it is outside, and if that should be written down in this section.
Okay, thanks. And then what about enforcing noise on state roads?
Pete, that was it's more your domain. Do you want to pick that one up?
So, you know, there's several highways in Southborough. That's we're part of Metro West. You're right. We have the Pike, 495, Route 30, Route 85. There are you know, Mass General laws that deal with like motor vehicle noise, you know, mufflers and spinning tires, and I would even venture to guess that, you know, a jake brake not properly maintained with an exhaust muffler on it would be allowed an excessive noise from a motor vehicle. It could be addressed through, you know, they could get stopped and get a ticket for it. So that's, you know, we can't rewrite, you know, the motor carrier and the laws in the Commonwealth regarding that, because those are throughways through our community. Just like everything kind of has to be uniform, like the speeds. So since it was already done in some laws, we didn't feel as though we could really rewrite the law because there's already laws in place. Now, whether they're getting enforced 100% is a different story, but the laws are in fact there. So that's why we kind of didn't really divulge much into that.
Okay, yeah, that's my understanding. Thanks for explaining it. I just think it's a bit concerning to see that so many people interpreted the survey and their responses thinking that that was something that could be addressed. I think that you addressed it and said that that's not something that can change, but it seems to be a major concern for people. And then I guess one last quick follow-up, but what's the procedure for this? Is it going to be voted on at some point? Because it's also a bit concerning that there's like 14 people attending.
Well, we're going to come up with a final document and we're going to submit that to the selectmen. They can either take it as a whole, or if they want to change it, or they can sit on it, or whatever they want to do. ultimately, when we would hope that they would, take the document and it would go in front of the town meeting on the warrant and it would be voted on. There could be several opportunities on the town meeting floor to either amend it, change it, whatever what happens, and then ultimately it would be either it could be put in front of the voters at town meeting to vote, or it could be also tabled as well. So there's several things that could happen, and we've put in a lot of hours and had a lot of meetings, and it is a very distinct possibility that nothing could happen. But that's kind of why we're trying to bob and weave to see if we can get a document that we can all live with. That there's going to be some people that aren't going to be happy, but it's all about a compromise.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see you guys put a lot of work into this, and it's definitely appreciated. And thank you for explaining the process.
Thank you.
So if anybody has more comments on the business and industrial noise section, I'd like to entertain that section here as we keep moving through. So Stephen Levine, it looks like you still have your hand up. I'll bring you back over.
Well, take my hand down because I'm done.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see any more hands on the business industrial noise section. So we'll move on to prohibited activities. So this section we tried to keep pretty straightforward as much as we could. There's certain pieces here that we were requested to bring over by the police, by Chief Paulus. So the yelling, shouting, helping define kind of when hours of general activity and making noise are allowed. The truck idling is a mass general law. I believe we just rewrote it out here as a reference point. Motor vehicles are part of the mass general law. We have some extra things in here about noise beyond the property line for like loading and unloading trucks. So we're not saying you can't unload trucks, but you can't do it if you're making noise. The establishment for liquor licenses, this is all part of the downtown initiative, trying to help keep the downtown as a place that can coexist with residential properties that are right beside it. So trying to make sure that we're thinking that through and keeping that type of activity in mind. One of the biggest things here that I'm sure we're going to have plenty of comment about is the leaf blower section. So this is written so that way fall and spring cleanup are not restricted for leaf blower use. But we had a lot of people in the public or in the previous comments in the survey about leaf blowers being a disturbance. So in order to help us guide down the right path, that this is helping solve a problem, we wrote that there'd be restricted leaf blower use in the times when leaf blowing is not the primary responsibility. And we have, as you can see here, the dates that we outlined, as well as property sizes. So if it's less than a 2-acre property, we said 1 gas-powered leaf blower. If it's over 2 acres, it'd be a maximum of 2 during the non-critical times of year, being spring and fall cleanup. So this section is trying to take as much of a balanced approach as the committee was able to get. And it's been a topic we'd love to hear more input about. And then the dog, we had a dog or animal making noise, the last item here. And again, this is Chief Paulus. It's written to help take care of any of the complaints that the police would be getting. So it's written in such a way that they would have something enforceable that they can refer back to. So now we can take comment on this entire prohibited activities section. So I see Jennifer Cunningham, I believe you were first.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to get specifically to that section 8 and what that is that all that we're going to be looking at, or all that is being stated, that there's going to be 1 gas-powered leaf blower from those times, from June to September, December to March? Is there going to be anything added to that section?
That's what we have right now, but you can see in yellow, we have public forum input, so.
Mm-hmm. I'm just really concerned about, getting back to this whole topic of the leaf blowers, and there's nothing specific in there to these ginormous hurricane machines that our town is being inundated with. I think I brought it up at one of the other meetings. I'm curious to know that if there could be something in this bylaw or proposed bylaw that there could be some kind of limited use and limited hours specific to those hurricanes and those leaf blowers and the level of noise that they do make. I mean, I think that, you know, my concern is, I understand people have to work. I'm not trying to put anyone out of business here, but at any given time of the week during those summer hours, and this goes to what Stephen, I think it was Levine, was saying, we do have a right to enjoyment in our homes and in our neighborhoods of peace and quiet. So I'm wondering if something could be written, perhaps that there's no weekend usage of such machines. I mean, if you can't sit in your own backyard, it's every single day during the summer. You can hear the hurricanes from on the complete opposite side of the town. And you can hear them for up to 7 hours a day alone in our neighborhood. That is excessive. And it's unreasonable for anybody to think that it's okay. I mean, the scope of this bylaw is to ensure an environment free from excessive sound. I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody out of business again, but there has to be a balance. And I think we have to ask ourselves what is reasonable and what's unreasonable. So I'd like to see something that limits the use and perhaps absolutely no weekend use of these giant machines.
Jennifer, can I ask, are you specifically talking about the hurricane
Yes.
size leaf blowers?
And the leaf blowers themselves. I mean,
Okay.
you know, again, what are leaf blowers for? They were, you know, traditionally, I think, for the spring cleanup and the fall cleanup, and now they're in everyday use because it's, you know, faster for people to get the landscaping done. I get it. But it's obscene what is happening in our town with the noise level of these machines on a daily and a regular basis.
They would be prohibited on a Sunday if they're getting paid, and Saturday after 6
Yeah.
if they're getting paid. Just, you know, it's not strictly just this. They would fall under regular noise.
I also wanted to ask the question about private entities, the private schools in our town and their use of these machines. How does that work for them?
Most of them have a contracted force. So if somebody's getting paid to do it, then it would technically fall in the contractor realm, as everything is currently written.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a lot of hands on this one. So Jennifer, if that's your last comment.
I did have just one last, you know, I don't know if this should be in this section or not, but you guys mentioned or you referenced the towns that don't have the noise bylaws. And you have made no reference to the towns that do have them and how that's working for them. The Wellesleys, the Westons, the Whalens, the Nantuckets. Are we looking at any of those? Are we going to be looking at any of those towns and looking at their law, noise bylaw that has been put into place and how that's working and why that was put into place? Are you gonna make any mention of the towns that it is working for?
How do you measure that? I don't know how you would measure that, how the town's working. Like,
Well, I mean, you said somebody made a reference that, you know, all these other towns don't have the bylaws, but what about the towns that do have the noise bylaw?
I mean, we did our research. We checked all the surrounding towns and other ones that were as we called our universe, some that are similar to Southborough in population and location. And you know, we looked at what they had, and we also have to balance that out about what we think would pass. I was a police officer for over 30 years. I reached out to different officers that I know in some of those communities, and, you know, how does this work? How does that work? You know, and so on. You know, I did, you know, get opinions on some of those things. So
Yeah, I think, Pete, the biggest thing you brought back from that feedback was the enforcement of the meters was a hard point to deal with from those conversations. So that was also another rationale for the direction that this is written, is the enforcement feedback from some of that research. But we're still in this section here. I think we can cover that particular topic a little bit better in the enforcement section. So if we can stick to more of the prohibited activities here, I think we would do well, because we have a lot of comment to this.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So Jennifer, I just want to say thank you. And, you said specifically, maybe we should consider limiting the hours, especially on the weekends. It's certainly something that we could look back at around the leaf blowers. We did look at towns that put a restriction on use of those leaf blowers outside of spring and fall cleanup. And that's why we brought this piece in here. I think it's the balance piece, because last year when we came to town meeting with the citizens petition proposal, a lot of people stood up and said, the decibel levels is confusing. And so we kind of looked at this and said, okay, so let's at least start with limiting or creating a set of hours, because anyone could come in right now because we have no bylaw. And, they could start at 6 a.m. and go till, midnight if they wanted to, whatever they wanted to do, because there's no bylaw, there's no enforcement. So we decided that we would maybe start with setting, some standards for hours around construction and landscaping, et cetera. And then we were looking at homeowner noise. So, it's great to have everyone's input today. And since we couldn't look at decibel levels, especially around the leaf blowers, that's why we were kind of trying to limit when they can be used. And certainly, maybe we need to take a look at how many, during that leaf cleanup, how much equipment is used and how loud that equipment is, even during spring and fall cleanup. So thank you for your input.
So the next hand I see raised here is Doris Cahill. Doris.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm Doris Cahill. I'm on 29 Overlook Drive. And like some others, I'd like to thank you for the time you've put in to drafting this noise bylaw, and special appreciation for the survey format, because I'm able to fill that out at a time I can do that and give it a lot of thought. And for me, it was very successful to be asked those questions and then re-engaged. So on this subsection, I have concern when listing the equipment specifically that we're eliminating, and you're suggesting that we're eliminating other equipment with definitions and limits. So I just have two thoughts on it, and then you can give me your thoughts on it too. For instance, I have issues sometimes with just singling out. It's very important that we tackle noise in the town, but singling out one piece of equipment, and you're suggesting other pieces of equipment such as wood chippers, chainsaws. Chainsaws can go on all day in my neighborhood for a variety of different reasons, taking the trees down. And if we're going that path, and that's what's going to make the bylaw successful when it comes to town meeting and it goes to the select board, are we going to do a thorough job and be more listing, or are we going to go the other direction and define contracted equipment, just general contracted equipment, if it were a jackhammer or any type of, there's so many types of loud noises in the contracting area. Maybe it's better to be a bit more general, a little bit less specific, because it's very important to cover that leaf blower for some of the members in the community. But in my mind, we might be missing other specific prohibited activities that generate very, very loud noise consistently, hammering, construction. And I know we have the hours and that would keep it down, but this section sounds like let's not do these specific things, such as 2 leaf blowers. If you're 2 acres, I think I read that correctly. Is someone measuring acres? It's too much management, maybe some input from the police department. Someone's out there measuring the property. So that's my thought. And you could tell me what you're thinking, or you're thinking on that topic, how you got to this point.
Yeah, I'll just say one of the issues about picking, 2 acres for, et cetera, was there are some properties that we needed to consider, like cemeteries or the schools, that if you limited them to just 1 leaf blower, you would have the noise on that property going on for a longer period of time than if you let them have more than 1 leaf blower to try to clean that property. But, and I think Cindy wanted to comment on this too.
No, I didn't want to comment. Doris, I just wanted, because I'm doing the minutes, I'm just a little unclear about how to capture your comment. Are you saying there should be more pieces of equipment that are limited, or that we should be more, I'm not sure what you're saying.
Well, I'm not happy as it stands. So that's a comment. Possibly the solution is in listing other pieces of equipment.
Okay.
Chainsaws. I mean, there's a lot of different pieces of equipment that go into different contractor activities. So
yeah, I think
there's weed whackers. I mean, I don't have to think too hard. Weed whackers, for instance, those would be multiples. I have trouble with singling out one piece of equipment when it comes to noise in general. So my second comment was maybe wrapping it into certain levels of equipment. Like I saw some weights and tonnages on the trucks, some level of equipment that would be more appropriate. I do have a problem with just saying leaf blowers only. I think there's other problems that generate noise, although that's important.
I think that's a great comment. We appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, I'm trying to just be successful. That's my attitude. And there's so much singling out, there's a possibility it'll fail. Sometimes you have to revisit things. I wouldn't even mind another survey post. I collect my thoughts best in writing. So I wouldn't even mind another survey if that gets a cohesive noise law passed, and not have controversial aspects in the bylaw that would cause it to fail at the last minute at town meeting.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Doris, that is a good point. And we have thought about, strategy, and you can start small with a small bylaw, and you can add to it, as time goes on. It is possible, but I do hear you, and a lot of the other equipment could be addressed with the construction noise that we had earlier. But certainly, we didn't do much with the chainsaws other than that. But the leaf blower was the main thing in the survey, and that was what we were getting a lot of input on, or a lot of concern about.
Yeah.
That's why we kind of singled that out.
Mm-hmm. So I was a business person for 35 years of my career, and someone will come up with something else that is equally as loud to be just as efficient. So let me kind of go at it from that perspective. So you're not covering it. If something's going to come up that someone does a workaround.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll bring over Adam Fanoff.
Hi, everyone. Once again, thank you for all of your work. I understand that something needs to be done. However, I also kind of feel as though that where does this stop? A quick Google search will tell you that a chainsaw is 106 decibel. A circular saw owned by a resident is 101 decibel. A lawnmower is between 90 and 110 decibel. And your Ring doorbell, which the Amazon truck, which is over 10,000 pounds gross GVW and can show up at your house 7 days a week, any time of the day, especially with independent contractors, is 70 decibels. So where does this stop once we enact something where we clearly stated earlier we weren't going to take decibel volumes into consideration at this time? Where does this stop? If the chainsaw is louder than the leaf blower, and we've used the leaf blower as the bellwether of noise, and we're only allowed to use one of them if you have 2 acres, but because I have 4, I can use more than that. And because I'm a resident, I can use them whenever I want if I choose to arm my 12-year-old with a leaf blower. Where are we going to end up if we don't use an actual meter to regulate the noise volume? We're very simply just putting things out there where, I understand and I agree with a lot of the things that are in this bylaw. We shouldn't be making noise on Sundays. Personally, we shouldn't be doing anything on Sundays. We shouldn't be making noise on holidays. The cemeteries don't work on holidays. The schools don't work on holidays. So these leaf blower bylaws do nothing for those establishments because they're closed. But where does it end? So my fear is we put something in place that we can build off in the future, but in reality, the thing we put in place doesn't even take care of the real problem. Noise is unnecessary at certain times, but not to move around too much within the context of the conversation. But I saw something that said, outside noise of commercial properties with liquor licenses is to be limited at 9 o'clock. So does that now mean that Owen O'Leary's on Route 9 in Southborough at Brook Lane has to close their outside deck at 9 o'clock after we spent the last 2 years promoting people to be outside because of public safety? To be outside in a clean environment, breathing air, and not having any issues with, being too close to the person next to them. Are we now going to stop all of that because it's 9 o'clock? They've been here longer than most of us. That building has been there longer than me. I don't understand how come we need to regulate any company's ability to make money if, we're going to go retroactively and say, well, if you're a new company, it's 9 o'clock. But if you're in existence already, then you need to change and stop. I'm just trying to protect everybody. We need to take care of, give people the ability to enjoy their yard. But unfortunately, the community is a lot more dense than it used to be. Anyone who's saying that the majority of the people feel this way or that way, we had under 500 respondents to the survey in a community that as of 2018, we only had 10,161 people in the community. So we had 500 people respond, and we have a community greater than 10,000. So we really haven't heard from everybody yet. I just want to make sure that we don't put something in place as a community that allows us to further constrict homeowners or small businesses from being a part of this community. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just make one comment? People keep talking about the homeowners and their leaf blowers. This doesn't exempt the homeowners, right? It's leaf blowers, no matter who owns them. So I'm not sure if that changes anyone's comments or whatever, but I just wanted to point that out.
But who owns them? You can't use them.
Yeah, you mean, Cindy, you mean that the 8th
number,
one
yeah.
there.
Yes.
Yeah, number 8.
Yep.
Yeah, it covers everyone, right?
Right. The way we have it written, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, Adam definitely outlines the tough job that we have between running businesses and survival and keeping the peace for the residents. It's not an easy task, and we've spent many hours on it. And I keep repeating myself, but there's going to be people on both sides that aren't going to be happy. But hopefully, it's something that we can all live with. That's what
and I just want to make sure that I understand Mr. Fanif's comment. It sounds to me like, sir, you are opposed to having restrictions, whether we have decibels or not. But if we do have decibels limits, that because they would be measurable, you would be less opposed? Or am I misinterpreting what you were saying?
Am I back on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not entirely opposed to putting something in place that gives the community some type of peace at certain times of the week. But as a small business owner, okay, not necessarily pertinent to this conversation at all because of the way I operate in my community, this will not affect me in any way. But simply advocating for people who may not be here because there's only 14 of us watching this right now, aside from you, there is a group of people in this town who will be greatly affected from a monetary standpoint in whether it's even one day a week because of a holiday that gets changed, or for example, tomorrow, my company is closed because we're having a snow day. If we were going to make that day up on Saturday because it's not a snow day and our noise is unrelated to snow, for example, then technically I've lost 2 days and I can no longer work in Southborough. Same thing in the winter, in the fall seasons, we have nor'easters. There may be a period of time where the ground is wet and muddy and landscapers can't do their work because the ground is wet and the ground is muddy and the leaves are whatever they may be and they can't move them because they're wet. But you also need to understand that if the leaves are wet but they have to get moved on a Friday, then someone's going to run a leaf blower a whole lot longer than when they were dry on a Saturday. So there's a lot of mitigation involved with trying to walk the line that the board is trying to walk. I fully understand the town needs to be quiet. I grew up here. I was born here. When I started my company here, there was nearly 50% less people in this town. When I was born here, there was 5,000 people in this town. The town has gotten more dense and people, want their space and their time, but it's different for every household. I don't know how we do this. Someone might be cutting firewood because they need to heat their home. They choose to heat by home. My parents do that. My father processes nearly 10 cord of firewood a year. My brother does the same thing. My uncle does the same thing. The chainsaw is louder than the leaf blower. So if they can't buy oil and they have 14 acres of land and they want to process their own firewood, then if they have a neighbor who is upset with the noise of the chainsaw, they now have a right to complain because of the noise level. But in fact, that person is just trying to stay warm in the winter. There are reasons for everybody to make noise. Respecting your neighbor is up to the person making the noise. If as a community, we understood what our neighbors were doing and we took time to appreciate their quiet time, then the world would generally be a better place. But blanket statements are not going to fix this. It's going to empower the people who are angry to occupy our police department and occupy our board of health, chasing around my neighbor's making noise at this time of day and he's not, outside of June 16th or September 14th, he's using his leaf blower because he just got back from vacation. Well, if that neighbor is angry because of noise, it doesn't matter what day it is. They're going to be angry because of noise. Same thing with the person who wants to make the noise. If they choose to make noise because it's convenient for their schedule and they didn't have to take a day off from work to blow their leaves, it's within their right as a landowner to do what they choose to do with their land. I don't think that there's a happy medium for anybody who's on either side of this conversation. As a board, you're doing your very best to walk a line, and I appreciate that. But in the end, 50% are angry, 50% aren't. So I don't understand. Whatever we put in place is going to be something to build off in the future that only further polarizes our community. If that makes any sense. Like I said, I'm just getting into this now, but there's a lot of things here that put everybody in a situation. We haven't gotten to enforcement yet. And I'm sure once we get to enforcement, that's an entirely another set of rules. Are we taking a police officer off of Parkerville Road doing a speed trap for someone doing 70 miles an hour because someone on the other end of Parkerville Road is making noise at 6:03 in the afternoon? How do we, so there's a level of importance to the situation. I understand everyone's right to enjoy peace and quiet, I also understand everyone's right to make noise, to clean and maintain their yards.
Adam, are you, to boil it down, are you saying that you're in favor of days and hours limitations, but not so many specifics that we've outlined?
It needs
Is
to
that
be.
what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think that
Okay.
this document is more than likely, I haven't seen all of it yet because I can only see as you scroll down, and I haven't looked it up on my own, but right now I can only see the line 78. There's probably about 70 lines too many. We should very simply state that in the town of Southborough, residential work can be performed this hour to this hour. Commercial work can be performed from this hour to this hour. Holidays are no, Sundays are no, and that's it. We're going to put ourselves into a corner by saying this is allowed and this is not. Because if we allow the Amazon truck at 26,000 pounds to come up my driveway at Sunday morning at 7 o'clock because I ordered dog food, but at the same time, I can't warm up my own commercial vehicle to go to work, then there's a problem. And I think that, you know, noise, this is easy. This doesn't need to be this complex.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
We have Karen Muggeridge next.
So let me know if you can't hear me. This is a video, audio of our neighbors using their landscaping equipment, not amplified. So this, I'm not quite sure how to address this, but this will go on for 4-5 days consistently. This is 5 people using a leaf blower. A cul-de-sac was built behind our house and they use 5 people with a leaf blower, with their own leaf blowers. There's no let up in the amount because they're all going at the same time. So when they let go of the throttle, it continues to have noise. This audio was taken, and I'm not going to keep playing it, I think I made my point, was taken from my deck. And we're 1 acre minimum here, and the noise is like intolerable. When I am trying to work from home, I acknowledge what the committee has tried to do and what some of the other commenters are saying. But there is no, like, that noise isn't less intrusive or less impacting of our well-being because it's the spring or the fall. So I think consideration should be given to restricting, and I don't know if number is the right way to do that, or duration or time. Our neighbors use the same, many use the same landscapers, and they go from one property to another. They blow, so it takes a number of days. And for some reason, I think they have the same 5 people trying to blow one leaf back and forth across the lawn, quite frankly. But they also blow the street, and I mean, it sounds absurd, but it's what happens. So I think it was brought up by a previous commenter to not single out leaf blowers, and that's reasonable. People have weed whackers and things. I think we also need to remember, I heard an ad actually this morning for a landscaping company that was marketing themselves Eco Quiet Lawn Care. And their premise, you know, one of the things that they were using to set themselves apart was that they used electric leaf blowers. So the comment of, or the premise that having quiet is not going, or limited noise, let me put it that way, is not going to be able to coexist with people earning their living from doing, you know, landscaping and such is just not true. There are options. So I think for me and our situation, and I don't think it's unique across the town, the elimination or the dates as they're defined here doesn't address the problem. And again, I'll go back to my initial comment of it's the people that have noise as a problem that need the solutions put forward in this bylaw. And to the just person who commented previously, we're not angry. We're not people who are angry about noise. We're people who have noise that impacts our lives and impacts our health and well-being, as you all have found in doing your research on this committee. So, you know, to categorize people as having a grudge or wanting people to not be able to earn a living, I think is totally unfair and not acknowledging the real purpose for going forward. I just realized when I was going to start by saying this, Karen Muggeridge, 15 Parmenter Road, a 25 year resident of the town and lifelong resident of Northborough, Southborough. I did grow up in Northborough and attend local schools. So I will communicate other thoughts with the committee via email or in other means. 9 years on advisory, I've had my share of marathon meetings, so I don't want to contribute to that. But again, I think there are those of us that for whom the noise is excessive, does need to be regulated, doesn't have to impose on other people's livelihood. And quite frankly, if it probably will in some circumstances, you know, if the weather is bad and people want to work on Sunday and they can't, that's the way things may have to be. That's not going to, I don't think, put anyone out of business. That's it. The only other thing in reading this, I see that you do say 2 gas-powered leaf blowers. I think a generic reference to equipment might be better, might be easier to be enforced. And I don't know enough about all the varieties of leaf blowers, whether it should be purely defined as gas powered. I think one, you know, I've heard 1-stroke engine, 2-stroke engines. I think you want a bylaw that will stand the test of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 more hands.
Just so we know, I'm planning on taking a recess at 9. I know it's we've been going almost at 9 o'clock. It'll be 2 hours. So we're trying to keep the comments as short as we can. Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, I was going to say we have 2 more hands raised on this topic. So Heidi is coming back.
Yep. Thank you. So this is Samantha Heidi, 191B Woodland Road again. And thank you for putting the consideration into the different items listed under here. I just had a few comments, and I do wholeheartedly agree with Adam's overall sort of discussion. One of my concerns was 0.7 in this listing, where you are restricting hours on establishments with a liquor license, and that would be any local restaurant. 9 p.m. quite frankly is fairly early. I know other town noise ordinances and places I've lived in the past, that's usually at least 11 to let them go through dinner service. If people are hanging out outside afterward, it's a good thing to have in the summer. And I personally think if you leave it in with the restrictive hours the way they are, you may find more objection from quite a few people that do enjoy going out to a local restaurant and want to be out later than 9 o'clock at night, especially in the summer. The other point point 8, which we've been discussing a lot around the leaf blowers, I would agree that less is more here. I think if you are too sort of restrictive on the number, on the size of the property, on the dates, plus the timing above, it gets complicated, it gets convoluted. And quite frankly, if someone is worried they're going to be in violation, my response to that would be, I'm just not going to clean my yard. I won't run a leaf blower. You won't have to hear it. I won't get fined. My yard will never be cleaned for however many years I choose to live here. And it's something that I have seen happen in the past, where if it's too restrictive, there are people that will just go the opposite way. And I personally wouldn't want to see that happen. You know, I live in a neighborhood where houses are fairly close. We do have a couple people that use commercial leaf blowers, and I understand the constant noise, but it doesn't bother me if it's during the day, during the hours that you've listed above. I think that should be sufficient because everyone has a right to clean and maintain their property. And to be able to enjoy it, you would like a clean yard in the fall, in the spring, anytime in between. And I think as long as you are respecting the hours outlined, it's reasonable for you to use the equipment needed to maintain that. And then one kind of minor comment on point 9 with the unreasonably loud, disruptive noise for more than 20 minutes. This is kind of vague because it's just emitted by any animal. I get that it's trying to get to people that own dogs that are consistently barking, but I would actually say then we need a more clear-cut definition of maybe animals that are controllable. I mean, I do know neighbors that have chickens or that have other creatures, roosters, things like that. They certainly make noise. Sometimes in the morning it's for more than 20 minutes, but I wouldn't want them penalized for that if it's something that's sort of beyond their control. So I would favor removing 9 or making a clearer definition to it.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your comment. We have one more hand raised in the audience. So I'm going to bring Debbie back over.
Hi there, Debbie Demuria, 58 Flag Road. I have some agreements with the previous speakers. I think I'd like to, see or suggest that we remove those dates altogether. I don't really think I understand why during certain periods, June to September and December through March, we have certain restrictions, and then other times of the year we don't. I think it would be much simpler if we, came up with something that simply states, what the limitations are. And I think the dates can make it a little bit messy. And I guess also on number 8, I'm going back to, starting the conversation off is what Doris was mentioning. I think this number 8 is one that's just kind of prickly, mainly because we don't define leaf blowers properly. I think some of us and some of the people who have been speaking are not talking about portable, handheld, or backpack leaf blowers. I've heard mentioned a couple of times these hurricane things or these things that you ride on. And those are not defined, I don't think, in this draft bylaw. And I'm wondering, what are those giant pieces of equipment that make a lot of noise? And so I think those should be, limited. I think, I look at this bylaw also in 10 years' time and looking through the definitions, we only see leaf blower. We don't see jackhammer or these other things that make a lot of noise. So thinking about it the way that Doris was talking about is maybe we can talk about it as something that's handheld versus ride-on. Or what is the weight of the equipment? Is it considered, I don't know, commercial grade or something? I don't know how these things are categorized. But since we don't really talk about those big, heavy pieces of equipment that are leaf blowers, they're not defined. And I think for me, that makes this section kind of difficult, because it's really, it's just sort of omitting the fact that there's large pieces of equipment that are being used. People have described them being used for hours on ends. They're over at the ball fields, they're on town property, they're in our neighborhoods. And, you know, so that we don't get too restrictive and say, I'm going to restrict this type or that type, maybe we have to come up with something that describes, you know, how much noise are these things making. I'm not sure how to do it. I just am thinking from what the other speakers were saying, and I think that is kind of at the heart of some of this stuff. And I think those types of large pieces of equipment should be limited. I don't think really anybody wants to, some of this stuff is really about shaping behavior, right? When it comes to like my leaf blower, I have an electric one, and it's, and it doesn't make a lot of noise. And then maybe my neighbor will see that mine's quiet, and maybe my neighbor will get one too. And that's how these things, we start to shape behavior in our neighborhood. And I feel very odd that we're not talking about the large pieces of equipment. They could fall into industrial. And I think that would be problematic if people are calling the Board of Health because of industrial equipment. So I really would like to see that section, I guess it's number 8, that kind of defines these ride-on leaf blowers, because they're really, I don't think, unless it, so it's further below, I don't see that it's listed in this draft. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more hand raised in the audience. Mr. Levine.
Thank you. A couple of comments. Number one, I take a little bit of issue with the comment about the number of people that participated as being representative of the town. From what I understand, there were something like 500 respondents to the survey, which out of 2,000 households, my experience, a survey that has a 25% return is a huge response. Number one. Number two is that I've also gotten the impression that a significant amount of those people have singled out the gas-powered leaf blower as a problematic piece of equipment. And I think that one of the things we should understand that this is not just the occasional homeowner using a gas-powered backpack, but contractors with 5 or 6 different people running these. This is an economic question that helps them deal with more customers. Okay, so we're talking about balancing equities here between the home, as we say, between the homeowners' right to enjoyment and the economic viability of the contractor. Eventually, what that translates into is not behavior change, but price change and competition, because the contractors will live within the confines that are provided by town law, and they will translate that into economic terms of what they have to do in terms of either raising their prices or conform, or because someone else will conform to the time constraints that the bylaw provides. It's not that they won't be here. They'll just, if not them, then a different crew who are willing to provide either, as you mentioned, electric leaf blowers, or they'll meet the time and equipment constraint. So it's not an issue of whether we're talking about constraining homeowners. We are constraining the homeowners that are hiring the contractors, because they may have to pay a higher price, but it's not them as individuals who are running these leaf blowers. And we're talking specifically about the gas powered. Nationwide, these two-stroke, gas powered, handheld or backpack lawnmowers are gas powered leaf blowers are problematic and becoming a greater and greater issue because in addition to the noise, they are incredibly inefficient as and polluters. The pollution they generate is, equal to 5 or 8 cars. So I think that singling them out is not by chance. I think that specifically it refers to an issue that is on the minds of a lot of people. The other thing is that it's not just the 14 people here or the 500 that responded. It's also eventually going to be town meeting. And I don't know what the average number of participants are in town meeting, but it'd be eventually their decision about what's contained. So it's not that what this bylaw and this committee provides, it's as they say, it's a question of what they're responding to what they've been told are problems and trying to balance the and the wording to make sure that they can get something through town meeting. So, but I think it's really, they're really responding to an issue that a lot of people are raising and are concerned with. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is the last hand we have up for this prohibited activities section. Might be a great time to either.
Right, everybody on the committee with a show of hands, if you want to take a 5-minute break.
Can we make it like an 8-minute break?
How about
My hand
7?
is numb.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. You want to make an 8-minute break? It's fine.
Thank you.
Starting now.
Okay, so we're back at 8:07. I mean 9:07.
I'm here.
8 minutes is up. Cracking the whip. We got a lot to do.
Excellent.
Is John there? Oh, there we go. Okay.
I think Lee
So-
said he was here in the background.
Yeah, I'm here. You just don't want to hear me crunching while eating.
Same with me.
Okay, so we're good to get going. Oh, Cindy, you got your
Yeah.
hand back. So this section exemptions, for those of you that read through it, we kind of kept it as straightforward as we kind of could. The obviously emergency vehicles are exempt. The real one here that I think most people will have a huge interest in is the emergency activity section. So anything related to storm cleanup, you know, if there's a windstorm, if there's a hurricane, if there's snowstorm, all of that sort of stuff, that there's an emergency cleanup or a need to clean it up quickly, is allowed, as well as the use of generators. So we said if there was a power outage or something of that nature, that sort of activity is also allowed, providing that there's a working muffler on that type of equipment to help with the sound mitigation. Obviously, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, sorry, unamplified public speaking is allowed, as well as parades if that have a permit. This is the one thing where there has to be a permit or a license issued for a parade or a public gathering or an event, something that would be necessary. A permit would need to have one for that type of activity. So any
So can I just comment if Sonia is still with us? She was the person, the grounds manager at St. Mark's. Can
She's
you
not
tell
with
if
us
she's
anymore.
still here?
I think she's gone.
Yeah, I'm not seeing her on the attendee list at this point.
Oh, okay. But I think that the snow business emergency and snow would address the concern that she was raising.
Yeah, I agree with that. It sounded, I don't know if she noticed it was in this section, so. So our audience, we have one hand raised for the exemptions section. Karen?
Karen Muggeridge again. So just a quick question. I see the permit for parades and such. Is there a mechanism for individuals or schools or homeowners or residents to apply for one-time or exceptions permits? Let's say they're having a wedding reception on their property, or it's graduation at one of the schools. Is there, have you provided a mechanism for applications and
Yes.
things for that?
Under the further down in this document, we outline that section or the permit process. When we get to it, we're talk about it more, but you'd apply to the select board to get a permit, and then they would grant you approval or denial on whatever permit that would be applied.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
You caught me in not having.
Anybody else from our audience that would like to comment on the exemption section?
Tim, just for the record, how many people survived the recess?
So right now, post recess, we still have 10 attendees. We have Adam Phaneuf, Andrew Pfaff, Doris Cahill, Jennifer Cunningham, Karen Muggeridge, Kevin Miller, Sam Stivers, S. Heidi, Stephen Levine, and Tim Litt.
Thank you.
So seeing as there's no more comment on this particular section, I'd say we move on to violations and penalties. Again, this section's pretty straightforward. We tried to keep it as simple as possible. We also have a built-in clause in here about within 365 days of first offense for a second offense. So that way, if somebody had an offense 10 years ago, it's not something that they should have to be concerned about at that point in time. We also talked about the enforcement official, which we'll get into in the next section. So any comments on the violations and penalties portion of this? I see S. Heidi.
Hi, I'm Samantha Heidi, 191B Woodland Road. I guess a few comments on this section. It would be nice to see, and in the spirit of this noise bylaw for, you know, everyone's usage, to start out with your first offense as a warning. I think going your immediate first offense being a $50 fine is pretty steep for a lot of people, especially if you're new to the Southborough area. You may have just moved here. You're not necessarily familiarizing yourself with every ordinance. I would rather see a warning as the first offense, and then, you know, fine escalations from there. I also, and I guess this is personal opinion, but within 365 days, so 1 year, also seems like quite an extended period of time. And you know, I know we've put in a lot of exemptions and a lot of specific hours in the spirit of maybe being good neighbors and talking to them or getting along to a certain degree. I personally would suggest for a shorter time period, maybe half a year. To me, if you're warned once in the spring, you maybe have a first offense because you leaf blow on a Sunday or something, you got caught off guard or you had to do it, then that happens in the fall again, just because it's within the same year seems like a very long period of time for that to go. And then the other section I'd like to see in this violation, and that isn't here at all, is it's fine paying a fine. And I think that that money that we're paying to the town should be set aside and should be put towards a specific purpose. Given that this is a noise bylaw and a noise violation complaint, and quite frankly, reading through the survey respondents and the fact that, you know, most people are actually complaining about noises from the highway and noises from roads and other things, it would be nice if the money collected from the fines and penalties goes to a specific fund that then assists with further noise mitigation, whether that be, you know, working with the state to put up barriers on 90 or on 495 or places where we're getting the extra ambient noise. I think part of what this section is missing is where that money is going. And I personally would like to see it used in a way that supports the spirit of this and supports sort of fixing the noise problems we're having, rather than maybe just going back to an ambiguous fund in the town or to the police or wherever else it would go.
Samantha, can I just comment? I used to work for the town and for the town accountant, and that's not something that we can generally, like any group can generally say, oh, we want this fine to go here or that fine to go there. Mass general law dictates how fine money that comes into towns, where it has to go. And typically it's to the general fund. It can't be directed to a certain purpose without like a huge, it would be very, very involved to try to set something up to direct it to a certain, it's not something we can specify.
So it goes into a general town fund, if I'm understanding that correctly.
The general fund, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's for any town. it's how funds are handled in towns and cities.
So
Yeah.
As far as the enforcement too, that it says if convicted, so more than likely you're gonna get a warning. It's only if the officer or the Board of Health decides to go forward to court. This is all for court stuff. I would imagine that it's gonna be very, very rare that these things are gonna end up in court. The court's not gonna wanna hear, this kind of stuff, so. It's more, I'm sure the first time around, it's going to be an educational kind of thing. And then if push comes to shove, this is just something that to fall back on, but it's more for court.
Yeah, and I do understand that. And I guess that's sort of another question I have here. I know we've talked at length about not wanting to make it too confusing with decibel limits and other things. But to be honest, it is also very vague the way it's written. It's just saying an enforcement official, whether that is the police officer or Board of Health, has the right to issue a warning of a fine. And then, like you said, if they proceed to taking that forward, it's incredibly subjective. And, depending on maybe relationships you have in the town or other things that are going on, I know and have seen in the past where these things, quite frankly, are quite skewed. And some people may end up with multiple fines and some people will never be fined. And I know that's not the intent here. And that I would hope, I'm relatively new to the area, but I would hope that the town would have a fairly even enforcement. But to be honest, it is incredibly vague the way this is written, of it's just up to the discretion. And there's no defining, if we're going to put fines on it, and you're going to put pretty significant fines, $50, $100, $300 is not a small amount to some people. I also think we may want to define it, if it's not in decibels, and in some measurable way where there's a metric that, from your property line, it needs to be whatever the excessive amount is, it's measured the same for everyone. It is completely equal for everyone. I think the kind of, we may do it, we may not, it's up to the officer that comes out, it's enforceable, but it's also, you may just get a waiver, is also not a great way to go about it. And I know we have that in the enforcement section, which is coming up. But I did also want to discuss that, because something that's not equally measurable for every person is also something that I think is important to be included in this.
These are all great comments. So
Can I make a comment? So in our discussions, when we decided not to do decibels, we decided that the timeframes would be the measurement. And so if people are making noise beyond those timeframes that we have determined, that's when someone who feels that a noise is intrusive, they have that opportunity to pick up the phone, call the police, make a complaint, have them come out and evaluate, what's happened. And if it's happening outside of those determined timeframes, that's how they will enforce the bylaw. I hope that makes sense. I know that we've talked a lot about decibels, and certainly in the previous version, we were thinking about measurement in that way. But when we constructed this, we decided that the timeframes would be kind of the measurement.
I understand the hours, but the hours are really in for the purposes of certain things, because those hours are defined as construction work and homeowner work, so that makes clear sense. But you do also have other noise restrictions, and we've gone over some of them for, say, noise outside of a restaurant, or maybe you have a barbecue in the summer that goes later into the evening. Then you're relying completely on having no measurement, and it's very subjective to the person calling. Maybe the person calling feels that you're too loud on your back deck at night, but your other 3 neighbors are okay with that. So sort of to my point, and I understand the decibels being very hard to measure, if there's no standard of, you know, from the edge of your property, it needs to be in excess of something, then it becomes back to being a subjective, well, the officer feels this party was loud, this one was quiet enough, so they didn't get a warning or they didn't get a fine. And quite honestly, one person's opinion of what is loud enough to call about for that noise is going to be very different from someone else's. And maybe from, you know, my background, I do work in the pharmaceutical industry and we run trials all the time. It's never a one person's subjective opinion. It's an entire group, an average of that, what you come up with as a measure. And then that standard is used for all. It keeps it equal, it keeps it fair. So there is still a lot of subjectiveness in the way this is written, and it is still up to them for anything that falls outside of the construction or the work by homeowner.
Tim, we have hours for outdoor noises, right? The shouting, the hooting, yelling, and stuff.
Yeah, I just scrolled back up to that section to show it. It's right here. 11 p.m., big hours between the 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So it's prohibited after 11 p.m. as a specific thing that was called out. It doesn't have a level where it's like, it just says as to annoy or disturb the reasonable quiet, comfort, or repose of identified persons. So it doesn't necessarily have a distance where it's taken, but it would assume across a property line.
And I guess if that's what it's assuming, then I would rather see that explicitly stated, because someone may say, oh, they're shouting, it's past 11, I'm calling. To someone else, it's conversation. So there is a good amount of subjectiveness. I understand the hours are clear, but if it's 11:05 and you're still out talking to friends or doing whatever you're doing, and someone else considers that being a loud noise that's annoying or disruptive, not having a way to standardize that, I think just leaves it up to too much interpretation. And quite frankly, then you have the opposite problem of, say you do get fined for it, someone coming in to argue that, and you have no metric to argue it against.
And we also have,
in their opinion.
we also have this other one line here that
unreasonable disturbance. Yeah, but what is an unreasonable?
Beyond the property line. So I'm the pieces that we have here pointing out, I'm just pointing it out to the team and everybody watching. And we're going to have further discussion about tonight's comments. So it's not going to end here. It's just taking it all in.
Yep. And I think that's just one thing to raise for that.
And Samantha, just for the minutes, I want to make sure I understood your comment about the 365 days. You wanted that to be less days or more days?
I would say less days for that.
Okay. Yep.
Did you have a suggestion of what you deemed as a reasonable number that's less than 365?
I would cut that in half. I would say maybe 6 months is reasonable. I do think a whole year is quite a while.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So right now we have one more hand up in the audience. So if we bring Karen back over.
Hi,
for the
sorry for just a quick comment. Many years ago, we had an issue with neighbors who had dogs that would come in, would leave their property and come to our property and defecate. And through much communication with the dog officer and such, there wasn't much done. So without getting more graphic, and I apologize for what I have shared, I think in order for, let me premise it by saying I give a lot of trust to our police department and whoever whatever officer is going to be responding to any complaints and calls. And I would like to think, maybe it's naive of me, but in a town like Southborough, people aren't going to be calling in their neighbors for noise violations, you know, if it's the first or second time. I would like to think that we're a reasonable community, and as has been mentioned before, we will go and talk to our neighbors and express our concerns or our unhappiness or whatever. That said, if at the discretion of those people who are enforcing this, if they feel that an offense is warranted to be issued, then I think it needs to have some teeth. You know, otherwise it's not fair to make a sweeping generalization, but $100 for people, many people in this community are going to say, okay, that's worth it. But I don't think that it's going to become an issue that often, because I trust our first responders and the police officers and the people on the Board of Health. So I certainly understand what the previous commenter was saying, and that, you know, we don't want to impose undue punishment for people living their lives. It happens to be loud, but it is something that needs to have some deterrent in it, let's say. And then, only so I don't chime in at a later time, I think there should be maybe some more thought given to acreage, where in the very, you know, sound traveling across 2 acres of land or whatever. We live up on the northeast section of town, where probably easily 3 miles away from the Mass Pike, but we hear traffic there. That's just cars traveling by. So I'm not sure that, and if someone is making noise on one corner of their property, that's closer to a neighbor and further away from people on the other side. So I'm presenting a question, not an answer, but I'm not sure that that's a good way to, define noise violations by, size of someone's property. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. So that's the last hand we have for the violations and penalties section. We'll move on to enforcement.
Yep.
So this section is fairly straightforward. The police department and Board of Health are charged with the enforcement of this potential bylaw, that the town departments are not exempt from it, and that temporary exemptions of this bylaw will be handled by the select board. The select board shall establish appropriate procedures for processing applications, including such hearings as the select board deems appropriate. And then the select board may require notification of the activity to abutters within 300 feet of the exemption location. So pretty much it puts the onus on the select board to handle any exceptions to this. So we have a hand up, Andrew Pfaff.
Thanks, Andrew Pfaff, 50 Oak Hill. I just think it might be beneficial to add in the select board also has the ability to hear appeals. I think that might be beneficial to have like an escalation point.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think it's something to consider.
I think that would be the including such hearings.
Anybody else comment on this particular section? Moving on. Definitions. We still have more definitions to add to this section, but we had a pretty good start here. So if anybody has any comments on what we have so far, we'd be open to them. Seeing none. Going twice. Oh, we have a hand. Andrew's back.
Sorry again. I would just add in from what we talked about in section 2, like the legal holiday. So I think defining it, including some of the holidays that are more work holidays, like Columbus Day and Patriots Day and President's Day, is beneficial. But figured I'd just reiterate it since it would be in this section too.
Great. Thank you very much.
So what do you call those holidays that you're referring to? The
more traditionally worked holidays. I don't know if that's the right.
We were trying to get like a uniform definition rather than creating our own independent definition. So I know where you're coming from. I know, there's the kind of the ones that aren't so serious, I guess, and then the ones that everybody seems to honor. I just don't know how to say that. It should be a one-line thing. It should be something everybody recognizes rather than listing them all.
I think listing them is good.
Maybe we could say any federally approved day except, and maybe except those few days.
Yeah, my only thing there too is I think it's important. Like, I think Christmas Eve is another one that's not technically a federal holiday that I think people would agree might be a good one to include. But just my personal preference.
Andrew, I think you had a list before. Do you want to just reiterate that for this particular section of the dates you were?
Sure. Let me just grab it. So New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving.
Whoa. I'm trying to get them down. New Year's.
Cindy, I'll email you the list right after the
Okay, thanks.
No worries.
Thanks.
Yep. Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day.
Okay.
Right. And so basically that would take off the federal holidays as what I call working holidays, and would include Martin Luther King Day, Juneteenth, Columbus Day, President's Day, and Veterans Day. And one thing I was thinking about, I do know that the town does have their contracted landscapers go out on Veterans Day to clean up the memorial before their service. So I would assume that could just be exempted by the selectmen, but I think that's just something to think about.
And I'd just like to note they don't charge the town for that either. They do it for free.
So they're not getting paid. They're not contracted work.
There you go.
True.
Excellent. If there's any more comment on this section, I think we've had some good comments so far. Seeing none. The last section is severability. This is, again, a legal section, so we're waiting for feedback from the town council on this particular topic. And seeing as there's no hands on this either, we have one more thing to visit, which is an addendum of items that could be potentially added back in. Lisa, I know that you were taking this on, so instead of me trying to give this its due, I would like to hand the floor to you.
Sure, thanks, Tim. So after thinking about contracted work and homeowner work, it was realized that site plan work that requires approval from the planning board, as well as
Subdivision.
grab my notes.
It was site plan and subdivisions.
Site plan and thank you, Cindy. Site plan and subdivision work. The planning board provides contractors, builders, guidelines on hours, and those hours are from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Saturday. No construction activity shall take place on Sundays or state or federal holidays. And so we were taking a look at this as having its own section. But we also wanted to take into consideration the approval not required lots, which also have site prep, construction of buildings, including also not so much road work, but it would be driveway work. So that's not currently covered under the planning board. And so we thought that it would be good to have a construction noise standard on its own outside of contracted work and falling in line with what planning board does right now. Certainly we reached out to the planning board to get some feedback on this. And I wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts on this section.
Before we open it up to the comment, I know this section's the most work in progress that we've had. Does anybody from the committee have any further things to add to what Lisa just outlined?
Well, yeah, I was on that little homework session, and the only thing I would add is, this would, I mean, we already have 8 to 6 for contract work on the, paid contract work already. So this would essentially shorten it to 2. So that's one thing, and in the effort of restricting some noise. The other thing would be, if this was approved, that any violation, even if currently the planning board, if they deal with a violation, it's kind of muddled on really what they do. What if somebody does make noise and the police come up, they see it, a report gets forwarded to the planning board, what happens? Not much. So is kind of what the answer that I was kind of got. I get. What do they do? Did they pull their permit? Do they, what did they just talk to them? Like, so this, if we did include this in the bylaw, at least it would be some horsepower. It would have some teeth. They could essentially get it, a ticket, I guess, and it could be a court matter with the $100 and up to $300. It would give a little bit of enforcement issue on it, where currently doesn't really seem to have a huge mechanism there. So that would be kind of the pros and cons that I see if we did adopt this. Is that a pretty good understanding, Lisa?
So let me just kind of expand upon that. Currently, if the police go out, because there is no bylaw, they really can't enforce it. And that's kind of what the planning board was talking about. So it's not, there is no noise bylaw, even though there's a standard set out by the planning board, and it could potentially go back to the building department. And maybe occasionally now the building department may say something to the builder. So if we have this section created in the noise bylaw, we'll have specific information on how to enforce it and what needs to happen. So it can be enforced and evaluated. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Cindy?
And what penalties there are.
Yes.
I mean, they're not, to a contractor, they're not huge, but at least
it's a place to start, right?
Yeah.
And it could get tweaked too. I mean, maybe we could have further discussion with the building department, because if they're not paying their fines, maybe they don't get permits in the future because they're not being a good neighbor, even though they may be there temporarily. Or potentially for years.
So I think we covered this section pretty well on opening up where we're at. I see Andrew has his hand up, so I'm gonna hand you the floor.
Sorry, guys. So yeah, Andrew Pfaff, 50 Oak Hill. I think this could, an A&R approved lot is not actually for building, it's for subdivision of land. So it's probably more apropos to say items with a specific type of building permit. Not a renovation building permit, but maybe a new construction permit would be covered under, and that would cover both any existing lot, which is really any A&R approved lot, whether it's grandfathered or newly A&R'd, or a lot that needs to go through subdivision or site plan review. But like the A&R definition is really any other lot that in the town would be an A&R lot. But I think you'd classify it more by a subcategory of contractor work that is a new construction building permit. Was probably more how you would define it. But again, this right now would go through the building department, but if you add it to your bylaw, then it would go through the police.
Andrew, if I want to put an addition to my house, I got to get a building permit. Would that be a new construction building permit?
I think it would be a renovation building permit.
It would be a renovation. Okay. Okay.
And again, we should talk to the building department to understand how you could, because right, it's a different scope, right? There's a building permit pulled for somebody to put a new roof on your house, but I don't think that's what the intention of this is. I think the intention of this is there's either a vacant lot in the town, or they're doing a subdivision and then you go through site plan review. But I've done an A&R lot before and sold it off, but that person built a new construction house, had to go through the whole building process. But again, they only have to deal with the building inspector, not with the planning board. So I think
Actually,
it's just
the planning board has to endorse it as an A&R lot.
correct, but has nothing to do with the building. You could just have an A&R lot created, and any vacant land in town that's already vacant land that you have the setbacks, you could build a house on it.
But
right?
they'll still need to go to the planning board for
No, because
an A&R lot.
You only need to go to the planning board to subdivide your property.
Okay.
So if the lot already exists, then you don't. And and you could subdivide your property and just never have anything built on it.
Sure, but if someone's planning to build on it,
correct.
I'm assuming it needs to go to the planning board for their endorsement.
No, as long
based on what the planning board told us.
The planning board can create the lot, right? And it only has to do with the subdivision of the land. And the reason why it's called approval not required,
okay,
is because as long as you have the frontage and the acreage and the right shape, the lot is approved. It's just the size of the lot. It's getting the plan and filing with the state. Once you've done that, the lot exists. Once the lot exists, then it's up to the builder and the building inspector to determine, everything that needs to go there.
Okay.
Now they could
Andrew,
build.
You're saying that we would need to go so if there was an existing A&R lot that did not need to be endorsed by the planning board because it wasn't subdivided.
Correct.
The owner or the builder would go to the building department to get permit for new construction.
Correct. And as long as they were building something that was within the permissible guidelines, it didn't require a planning board or a ZBA, approval, for, how many 5 stories or, multifamily, et cetera, something that requires a special permit, they could just build it with the building inspector with no oversight from the planning board.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that option up.
So Andrew, I have 2 questions for you, and I don't mean to turn this a different way, but I think that you could be helpful for where we've been on this. I know that you're on a board in town, but I'm not exactly sure what board, and I know you have an expertise in this. Do you mind just saying what that is?
Yeah, so I'm the vice chair of advisory.
Okay, perfect.
But speaking as myself.
This is a section that
we know how that works.
This is a section we've had some back and forth on, and you said something a minute ago that I'm sure we have great notes of how to write this, but do you have a suggestion that you would want to share with us after the meeting of an approach that you would think would be a reasonable take on this, knowing what the goal is?
Yeah, I think it could basically be a sub item of the hours for contracted work that is specific to contracted work under like a new construction building permit, or even a demolition building permit might be a good one too, but just not a remodeling or a renovation building permit. So
Okay.
I think demolition would be good too, so that people aren't demolishing, after 2 on a Saturday, I think would be good too.
So something kind of like this note starting at 188, but just kind of rewritten and adding it to the contractor work standards section.
Yeah, so it's just like under contractor work standards, work that's, under a new construction building permit or a demolition building permit is further constricted to 2 p.m. on Saturday, basically.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
That's that's the wordage I was looking for when we were,
Yeah.
I knew there was some kind of term, but I didn't know what it was.
We were struggling with that one on our
Yeah,
last.
that's great feedback.
Tim, do we have any more public comment?
We have one more hand raised in the audience, so I am going to move to Karen.
Yeah, on the last topic, I had brought it up at one of the original or the first public forum of using the planning board's ability to put an order of conditions on construction. And it sounds like you've all researched that and, found how that's available to be applied, which is great. And thank you. The further, I don't know if it's definition or whatever, but there's A&R lots, as the previous commenter was saying, is based on frontage and other things. I'm not sure that the right way to write this bylaw is by using planning board or planning bylaw terms to define what this is trying to do. So what I had brought up initially was, there is an ability for planning to put time constraints and, when trucks can start showing up at a site and when it's too early to idle and all of that. And hopefully they will continue to do that. Outside of that, I'm thinking that it might be better to just have general guidelines, general things that this bylaw applies to, rather than saying something so specific that it's an A&R lot or it's personal construction or anyway, just a thought.
Perfect. I think that's well noted on that point. And this is something we're going to pick back up after. So I think.
Yeah, and just before you close off, again, thank you for this. It's always, those of us that show up to these meetings have our voices heard, but it's important to remember that we're kind of a straw poll. There's other people that for whatever reason, it's not a priority, but they still have concerns or, I appreciate you're taking those of us that showed up, our voices and opinions into consideration, but it's as like with the survey, it's not the voice of the entire community. And that's going to be, as was said, at town meeting. So, again, thank you for giving our input some weight, but as you go forward on modifying, the excellent product that you have, just try to remember to get more input and such from other people in the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Tim, is that
that's the last hand raise. So I'm doing one final sweep in case anybody has final comments on anything that we went over. But I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to make a motion that we end the public forum.
At 9:51, we'll end the public forum.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to do that, but sure.
I think we have to because it's a public session. And I think we technically have to vote on it, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, we'll do it just in case. Cindy, you want to end it?
Yep.
Lisa,
Yes.
John? Your mute's on.
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And Tim, you said yes, and I'll say yes as well, so.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody, for participating in the public forum. So now we can have an open discussion on the public forum.
So Peter, I want to add, I mean, there's some really good feedback. So it's great to expand our knowledge from our neighbors and so forth. So I've learned a few more things tonight that we need to consider.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to have some sections that they get buttoned up a lot tighter and neater from this. So I think it was.
I've got 4 pages of notes that I took on this too.
So are we going to go till 2 in the morning?
I think I don't think that I have it in me tonight to actually dive into making changes.
Me too.
So I think we would do well to decide what our next steps are as
yeah.
So I'm exhausted as well. I do know that it looks like we're on the selectmen's meeting, which is next Tuesday at 7:30. They want to hear from us. So, you know,
Well, they want to hear from you, not us.
I mean, I think we're going to have to, I guess if you want, you know, if you want me to just say where we are and what we've been doing, I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, pure and simple, we need to do some more work on this.
I mean, this is just open for the discussion, but I would like to have a document that we could give that has things we can't live without and things that are negotiable. So maybe they could give us some guidance or some flexibility. I don't know how we could do that, but you know, to kind of prioritize things. In other words, not just like, here's the document. My fear is they're just going to go, you know, and it just dies there. Or if we give them something like, all right, we really want A, B, and C. The other ones, if you want, we feel as though they're important, but if you want to, you know, make it smaller or make it less, or whatever, those are alternates. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking. If you guys are against it, I'm totally fine. But I just wanted to give them a little wiggle room because I really, my fear is, you know, go to town meeting. I've been in a lot of town meetings. People just like tonight, they don't look at the whole document. They've had weeks to review it. They don't look at the whole, they pick, and you know, simple questions could be answered if they just read it. And you're going to get that on town meeting floor. And you know, I've been on committees where they've been unsuccessful getting things. It's a tough thing. You put in all that work and, you know, all these meetings and minutes and then it just goes nowhere. I've been there. It's tough. And I want to see this be successful in some fashion. So I'm just sharing my experience and some insight. So that's just kind of what I wanted to say. Go ahead, John. So you have your hand up.
I like Lee, I have 4 pages of notes. So one of the things I'm looking at the notes is this is, you know, if this is a sampling of some of the citizens that'll be at the town meeting, this is really the questions that if we wanted to have a 1-page pamphlet of educating the public of what this is, some of these questions, you know, the lady from that talked about snow blowing or snow removal, you know, just having something, you know, this is a very friendly, you know, considerate bylaw to take into account all sort of fashions. And I think creating a little 1-page flyer, just educating on the top 10 questions that most people will say, in really high, you know, large font, really bulletized so that, because people aren't going to read it and they're just going to react to somebody coming up and asking a question, and all of a sudden you get the negative momentum. So I took a lot of notes today because I think this will be the sampling of questions we're going to get. But I also highlighted, think of where we spent a lot of our time, and we trying to avoid, I don't know how we avoid the leaf blowers and so forth, because, and Lisa, I do want to acknowledge your effort and your diligence to move the rest of us who are here more agnostically. I didn't really know about the noise issues in town, and I do want to applaud you to push us to consider certain things that I would never considered before. So I just do want to recognize you.
Thanks, John.
I would too. And it's one of those things where if you don't know much about it, you think it's something that can be very easy, 2 sentences. And once you get into it and you start listening to people, and then this gets brought up and that gets brought, it's a complicated issue, and it can't be done properly in one paragraph. It has to be what we got.
John,
it should actually even be bigger, but
Yeah.
John, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, you've had a thing in the past about your approach to this, about decibel levels, non-decibel levels, times, and all that. You've been concise in the past. Do you just want to repeat kind of what you said in a previous meeting about the approach of the decibel versus no decibel from your engineering perspective as well?
From an engineering point of view, I am extremely quantitative, meaning, and that's the way I think. That's the way I break out problems. The problem is when you quantify something, it's the uncertainty of that piece of that number. And the issue is humans aren't programmed to understand statistics and variability and so forth. So when we talk about decibels and measurements, and Peter, you felt this when you took your measurements out, they're all over the place. And I wouldn't, in my point of view, is we need to have quantitative numbers that are factual and not questionable in the court or with the officer and so forth. And that's why instinctively I'd want decibels, but I have no idea how to enforce that and how to actually empower the officer to do something reasonable. And so it's more about making sure that the quantities we put in place are actually high statistical validation data. And that's why I'm saying days, that's very specific. Hours is very specific. I don't know how to make decibels, because even in my lab at work, the measurements are highly variable. And that's what I want to highlight, is that's why I went back to days, times, and so forth, which I think, Lee, you also had made a comment on that first meeting.
Yep, I would agree with that.
I think that's probably why when I called to those towns that had those, they said, we don't use them and they don't work, and it was kind of a non-issue.
And I think
Chief exactly what you're talking about.
I think Chief
said the
Paulus
same thing.
mentioned that how enforceable is that in court? Because if I got put up in a fine, a cheap lawyer can get me out of it just by reading some statistics of the meter.
Yeah, calibrate the meter. Who did it? Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think on its face, it's a wonderful idea. You bring out this device, you hold it up, and it says yes or no, and it's cut and dry. No matter who, there's your ticket. I mean, it's a wonderful idea, but in reality, it doesn't work that way.
And the only thing I also add is, when Lisa and Peter proposed their noise bylaw last year, I actually went out and measured all my equipment, and they were all over the place. And that's why I stood up and rejected it, because I did not know. Well, the joke was I was going to get my daughter to basically go and cut the lawn and then call the police on her and see what happens. But
Nothing would have happened, John. There's no noise bylaw.
Oh, I would be upset if it passed.
You get a criminal record.
But Elisa, I do want to thank you for highlighting at least me for some of the issues that some of our neighbors have that I don't have.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you look at the survey and you look at what we got back from those close to 500 people. And you would hope that the people that don't want to have anything in place understand that there are people in this town that have intrusive noise, and that we should all be good neighbors, and we should try to understand that people are in different situations. But also keep in mind that it could change in your neighborhood at any time when they decide to cut down trees and put up 3 houses around another house or whatever it might be. And, and then you've got to deal with that noise with construction or, at this point, the contractors, the landscapers, they can come in at any time and the residents do not have any rights. And that's how I look at it right now. So if we can at least start with timeframes on this, it's a place to start. Because I do realize that last year at town meeting, decibel levels, they just weren't going to fly. But if we can start somewhere and we can limit the times that this work gets done so that there is some time at the end of our day during the weekends where there's peace and quiet and we don't have to listen to that and it's not affecting our health, our blood pressure, our sleep, because they're showing up at 5 a.m. and they shouldn't be. It really affects our health. And I really hope that people do understand that it affects our children's growth. It affects people's cognition. There's so much to keep in mind. And if we are bombarded with noise, we need to figure out how to reduce the amount of noise that we have around us.
All right, well, thank you. Do we have any meeting minutes to approve that's on the agenda? I didn't see any circulated. I know we did have a meeting the 17th. I know it was only a week ago.
Yeah.
Did we, not to jump backward, but did we decide what we're doing next week for the selectmen's meeting?
Well, that was my next thing, but
Okay. We were deciding.
so if we have no meeting minutes, maybe next week we can get those done. So yeah, the next meeting is 7th. I'm going to have to probably change the agenda. I don't know if I even posted it yet, but I will have to post that obviously first thing tomorrow. I don't know that I posted one for the selectmen's meeting, but I'll post one tomorrow morning right away. It's going to be the selectmen's meeting 7:30. What do you want to do? Do you want me to do what I did last time? Just give them an update? What do you guys want to do?
I mean, I believe they're expecting some level of the draft.
I know. Well,
we might want to do one of two things, in my opinion. I don't want to spin our wheels for no reason and go give them an update that's not ready for an update. But their next meeting would be 2 weeks after that, which would be mid-March, and it might be too late. We're still waiting for approval or feedback from town council at this point. So we were hoping for that feedback as well to the other feedback we've had. It might be worth giving an update, from my opinion, it might be worth giving an update saying we need whatever we need still. So that way they're aware of where we stand and maybe they can apply the right pressures in the right places for whatever they can do to help us get this through. Because I think we're charging towards a mid-March date for when the article has to be pretty much ready. I could be wrong on that.
Go ahead, John.
So, Peter, one thing that you could request for your meeting is, can you give us a schedule when we need to do this? Because they've been very vague, even though they moved the town meeting a couple of months, we're still basically on the same trajectory. And it's like, we've been meeting every week with work in between. It's like, not that, I want to make sure we provide the best first, bylaw that can actually get passed in town. And I don't want to hurt ourselves by having an arbitrary date that's not really real. So that's one thing we could ask of them is, what is really the date?
I might be able to get that from Mark Purple as well.
Yeah, we've asked for it, but it hasn't been.
Right. I mean, I think to be honest with you, I think they're expecting the final thing next Tuesday, but that's obviously not going to happen.
Based on the feedback we just got, we've still got work to do, and they're going to have to give us. I mean, it took them 3 months to pick the committee.
Yeah,
we have been working. I think we're the only committee that I've ever heard of that meets as often as we meet. And we obviously need a little more time.
Right.
You know, they got to be a little more realistic with us, I think.
All right, I will.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
And it's not something I truly want to do, but what if we meet on Monday?
Can we?
I'm able to meet on Monday.
No.
Oh.
Public law.
Giving-
Public.
I think we can.
Is it days or business days of posting of a meeting? I think it's days, not business days. So as long as we had our
we can meet
agenda,
on an emergency basis, we can meet up to 48 hours notice. So, I mean,
let them know tomorrow.
we're not dealing with any, we're not dealing with any financial issues. So like we're just an advisory committee. So I don't think we can really get into too much trouble.
We could check
if
with
we
Jim.
work without enough notice.
we would find out tomorrow. I believe it's not business days. I believe it's just hours. And I believe if we got it up tomorrow and it was posted before noon, we're in fine territory if we have the availability to meet. I just suggest that we try to keep that, if we do agree to meet, we try to keep it to as abridged of a meeting as we can, knowing that we have another, like some of us have a meeting on Tuesday with whoever decides to join, and a meeting right now scheduled on Wednesday if we decide to keep that date. So unless we plan to move our date, I'd be in favor. I'm okay.
Monday night is going to be very tough for me. I've got a couple of things that I've got going on that are going to make it very tough.
How about earlier Tuesday?
I think that's not setting us up in the right.
Yeah.
And I'm working that day, so I won't be home till like 6 on Tuesday.
I mean, not to avoid Cindy, but I mean, is there, do other people have that opportunity? Cindy, do you have any opportunity for a shortened time frame that day without trying to really squeeze it in? But you know, knowing we're shooting for the Tuesday select board meeting.
Well, I think realistically, we are not going to be able to get this thing finalized for Tuesday. So, you know,
I can just give them another progress report. I'll show them the actual draft. And I'll just say it's a work in progress. We may eliminate sections, we may add sections.
I mean, I have a couple of changes that if we were going to discuss the document, that I wanted to talk about things that, I feel that aren't covered. I'm sure other people do. There's no way we're going to have it ready for their meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
Lee, you said something at the same time Cindy was talking. What did you say?
I forgot now.
Sorry, Lisa, to add to your, I don't want to say this. What if a few of us meet Monday to try to collect some of the feedback we have today? So when we meet on Wednesday, we have at least some of the summarizations, so we can be a little bit more efficient on Wednesday.
I mean, I didn't hear anything tonight that I felt moved me in any one direction regarding off what we have done already.
I agree with you. There's just a lot of little tweaks and improvements we have throughout the document.
I see Andrew Pfaff has hand raised.
Yeah, Andrew, you have something to add here?
Yeah, hey guys. One thought I had is one, you guys are probably gonna need to come in for advisory at some point just to talk about it, so we can vote to support or not support. We're supposed to have, I think, a meeting on the 8th with the BOS to review the budget, a joint meeting. And Peter, maybe you want to reach out to Lisa and see whether or not it would make sense for you just to come. If you do an update next week, fine, but come for the 8th meeting and we can kill two birds with one stone. But I'll leave that up to Lisa.
Yeah. I mean, if that was the case, that would be easier. Then we're not trying to plan an update. We're not trying to schedule an extra meeting. We can give it the proper time Wednesday, if we could get on the agenda for the 8th instead of the 1st.
Correct. I think the idea was we were going to focus just on the budget, but maybe it's you guys in the budget. But again, I'll defer to Kathy Cook on advisory and Lisa as the chair of BOS,
Yeah.
but just a thought.
The thing they might say is we don't have a final form, so I don't know if it would, unless it is the final form. I don't know if they would let us present to both and it'd be killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, especially if they're trying to get the warrant printed mid-March. But again, I think to you guys' point, I think they were talking about a town meeting at the end of April, but now it's May. Maybe there's an extra week we can squeeze out of this thing. But just wanted to throw out that the 8th meeting and as maybe an option for you guys.
I don't think I've ever been to a town meeting that there wasn't like an addendum to the warrant that, a last minute change. So I would think that we could do that, especially when there's months.
Yeah, we can always print it and amend it on town meeting floor. It's just ideally you don't do that.
Right. Go ahead. I see Sam has got his hand up. Go ahead, Sam. Your microphone's off.
Yep.
There we go.
Thanks. Andrew, that meeting on the 7th may be moving. I saw a note, so it's not clear, may or may not be, I'm not sure, but just I wouldn't count on that for sure. And to John's point, John, I think you got to be careful about subgroups meeting to avoid the open meeting law issues. And even if there are only 2 or 3, that's not a quorum. I think the town clerk has opined that that is something that should be a posted meeting, et cetera, although technically that may not qualify. So I would urge you to be careful about that. The way other committees have done this, have appointed one person to do whatever the additional work is. And then that person has the option of reaching out to others for input, again, in a way that doesn't, violate an open meeting law requirement, but not to create a subgroup. The town clerk has advised caution on creating subgroups to do work. So a comment. So, and if you have questions, again, checking with town clerk is a good resource for that. Before you do something, somebody gets upset about it. Thanks. Good work, guys. Keep going.
So, Andrew, are we talking the 8th or the 7th for the advisory board?
The last meeting I saw was they were talking about the 8th, which is the Tuesday, which is usually when select meets. But Sam, I guess I don't know what the latest is with that. You would know better.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's I'd say it's slightly up in the air at this point. So checking with Mark or Vanessa or somebody would be good strategy.
Sam, did you say that there's a date that we need to be targeting it right now? Are we up against something where it's not legitimately a date?
I actually don't know, Tim. Again, check with Mark Purple is the best person to understand what the timeline for the warrant and printing and all that stuff is. I could guess, but Mark's the best source for that.
If you had to guess, would you?
He wouldn't.
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's a no.
I've gotten in a lot of trouble guessing in the past. So
no politician says no, Tim.
That's fine. I'm just trying to see if what we have to try to do ourselves. So it was worth the ask.
All right, so can we set a schedule for us? I mean, it sounds like we've got that meeting. The select board is on Tuesday, and we can come to that. And on Wednesday, we have our meeting set up at 7 o'clock, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I'll post the meeting a joint meeting with the selectmen.
So we'll have 2 meetings, one on Tuesday, one on Wednesday.
Correct.
Wait a minute, is
the
our
select
meeting?
board start at 6:30 or 7:30?
They start at 6:30. They said the earliest we would have a slot would be 7:30. So we technically wouldn't need to worry about being there until 7:30.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Then the question
for the meeting next week, I thought you said the Wednesday the 3rd, and I'm thinking
the 2nd.
Wednesday
the 2nd, right?
Yeah. So select boards on Tuesday the 1st. We would be meeting on Wednesday the 2nd.
At 7, right?
And then the question is, do we want to schedule the next meeting as well at this point?
Because that's the only one I have on the calendar right now for a room.
Same with me.
I think we should.
Well, I think we don't know how much work we're going to have to do in a certain amount of time. We may have to do a meeting and a couple meetings in a short amount of time. So I think we should leave that flexibility.
Yeah.
So we know,
That's
so we
fine.
know more.
We just need the room. So if we think we have an idea, I can just schedule the room for now and we have it and we can delete it if we don't need it.
If you want to do that next Wednesday, Wednesday seems to be working out for everybody, right?
Yeah, Wednesday the 8th, Wednesday the 9th does work for me.
All right. Is everybody good with that?
Wednesday, the 9th at 7.
Would we want to do the 3rd? That Thursday? Do 2 days in a row?
Well, it's going to be 3 because we're going to have Tuesday as well.
Yeah, I can't do the Thursday. I
Gotcha,
have
that's
another
right.
meeting.
Okay. I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate with wanting to get this done too. I think we're so close that a little bit of extra effort right away would mean that we have a lot of extra time.
I mean,
I mean, next week, I mean, if the, the advisory meeting is not on the 7th or we're not going to be on the agenda, my question for Cindy is, are all Monday nights out for you like most Thursdays are out for me?
Monday nights are very, very difficult for me.
Okay.
I was going to say whether we want to try to meet twice, either next week or the week after that.
I mean, I'd be for 2 meetings. I mean, my schedule's okay. It sounds like I'm less restricted than most of you guys.
Yeah,
I'm married and not retired, so I don't have a life.
me neither.
I mean, do you want to do Thursday the 3rd? We can just set it up temporarily.
Well, Lee's not available.
Lee can't do
I'm
it.
not available. I have an in-person meeting to go to on the 3rd.
Okay.
I can do Friday the 4th.
I can do Friday. I don't have a social life.
I can do Friday.
Friday's fine.
I can do Friday.
I mean, you don't know what's in my cup, right? So.
So we're gonna go for Friday the 4th at 7.
Yeah, whatever time. Yeah.
That's good.
All right, that'll give us the extra meeting. Yeah.
I mean, if the selectmen say no hurry, you got plenty of time, we won't need it, but it's better to have it and like Tim says, grab the room. I'll have to post
I mean, if
that
you
meeting
could
too.
press them for a little bit more time, just because we've been meeting so often.
Yeah.
Can you guys believe that all 3 meeting rooms are available Friday at 7 p.m.
can't
on
believe
Friday?
that.
Yeah, I can sort of believe that.
Meet on Friday night?
Imagine that. But the Wednesday the 9th, we got the last one available. So. Yeah.
Well, if we meet we meet on a Friday and we'll have nobody in the audience that night. We'll find out who has a social life.
I hope the town clerk is coming in tomorrow.
Actually.
Oh, that's right. The snow.
Right, and don't they only go till noon anyway?
Yeah, I know.
Work from
In fact,
home.
I'll do it tonight.
Yeah, I'd imagine that position's a remote opportunity right there.
Yeah.
So I'll post the selectmen's meeting the March 1st and then another meeting March 4th. Did I do the second already?
So that
I'm not sure. Did I post the second? I'll have to check. You guys didn't get.
I'm not sure. Are we gonna go with Lee's PowerPoint template for that selectmen meeting, or do we want to give more of a verbal update?
I think his update, I think that little presentation would be great.
Okay, I'm in
Well,
favor.
covers things.
I'm in favor of using it.
Go for it in the public domain now.
Well, you mean it for me to do it at the selectmen's meeting?
Yeah, I'm in favor of just walking through it at a high
Yeah,
level.
whatever, yeah. Tim, you're gonna be there to do the.
Yeah. I can drive, or we could send it in because it's already done. So if we're not changing it, it can go either way. But I'm happy to drive, and we can present as a team.
Yeah, have you drive so I'll talk and you flip or whatever.
Okay, that works for me.
Yeah. Could you send that to me in advance so I can kind of go over it a little bit?
It's actually in your email right now from Lee last, because
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
have
gonna
it.
change it.
All right, from the it's the last
Friday.
draft that I sent out to everybody.
I'll forward it again, so it's top of your inbox.
Yeah, I gotta go through all these meetings to see which ones I posted and didn't.
Hey, Peter,
Yes.
this is Sam. Comment. If you're going to use that, I would suggest you get it to Select Board's office ASAP to go into the packet for Tuesday night.
Right.
I don't think it's come out yet, but it will be published very soon, and maybe they've already put it together.
They
But
did.
put out
They
an
did
addendum.
ask me today. I guess they sent me an email. I wanted to wait till after this meeting before I responded.
Okay.
But
Good. They could get an addendum out if need be, but it'd be good if they had that just to include for public visibility there.
Tim, can you send also to me the latest draft so I can just attach it to the?
Yeah. You want me to send it to the email we got earlier? I'll just do it. I'll do it direct, and you get it as well.
Yeah. I'll just respond to whoever I didn't recognize the name, but somebody reached out. Yeah.
Melanie Atsuka is the administrative executive.
So I'll
assistant
respond to
there.
her saying, here's the PowerPoint, here's the draft, and then I'll post the meeting as well. 2 meetings.
You know, I'm really hoping that with 2 3-hour meetings scheduled for next week on Wednesday and Friday, that we can come pretty close to wrapping this up, particularly with the fact that you'll have gotten the input from the select board.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I would think
Yeah.
so.
We just need to get the answer from what Sam, you're still on the line here. We sent Mark Purple the draft, which was draft 4. We're now 2 levels beyond that, but you know, some of the words are different, but it's not insanely different. Is that something you think we should send again to council, or should we wait for the response that we haven't received yet?
I would be inclined to send it to him with the latest version. I don't have any idea where he is with that process, but he's usually pretty prompt. I'm a little surprised you haven't heard from him.
Mm.
But sending it again to Mark and say, please pass along to town council wouldn't hurt. And
Okay.
you can say, you know, I don't have time to do this draft now, but I'll tell you about the first one. So.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any other
So
business
the
properly
item,
brought before the committee?
well, I just want to, for number 8, the minutes. So the minutes for this meeting, I mean, I have pages and pages.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm going to summarize. Who
Yeah.
had comments? If they had a concrete comment, I'll say what the concern was or what the requested change was. And if they didn't have something that I could easily identify as a question or a concern or requested change, I'm just going to say that they made a comment. I think that's the best I can do. Does that
So
work?
if you do that, it's still going to come out to about 9-10 pages. That's what I did for early December.
Yeah, I don't think you even need to go that
Right.
detailed. I think that, well, I don't know whether Sam has a comment about how detailed he would expect to see the minutes be, given that the entire form is available for people to review.
All right.
Yeah, I did minutes for advisory for a couple of years, and I guess my bias is you want to catch the important things, but not word for word. And the technical requirement is very brief in terms of who was there, what the votes were, and that's about it. But
And there were no
again,
votes, so that would be really quick.
Yeah, but having reasonable detail of the discussion, I think, is useful. I can't remember if I've mentioned this before, but the recordings on YouTube actually have closed captions after a couple of days. And so what I've done in the past is you can actually print out the text from the closed captions, and that gives you the word for word structure, which is not perfect. The transcription is not perfect, but at least that gives you a good outline to start with. And I've done that in the past dumped it into a Word document and then gone through and basically cut out pieces of that to capture the context. It doesn't tell you who said what, but if you were at the meeting, you got a pretty good idea what it was. But anyway,
That may
that's
be a little
shortcut.
beyond my technical expertise, but
Cindy, if you need help with that, let me know. I'm happy
We
to
can
give
help.
you.
thanks, Tim.
But not great detail is required, but catch the important things. And I think you'd be
Okay.
great judge, Cindy. You were here, so you know what the key points were, and that's enough.
Yeah,
I think it's just such and such voiced a concern about section, such, you know.
Yeah,
You know,
that's pretty much what I'm gonna
Yeah.
do.
I don't think you have to articulate every single syllable they said.
To Sam's point of what he said about that other thing, it's an effort of copy and pasting and then just proofreading. So for summarizing what he just said, it's copy, paste, proofread, fix a couple words. It might be less effort, it might be more effort, but it's a different approach. So for what it's worth,
How
you
do
don't
I
have to
find it on
go-
YouTube?
I can help you with it. It's the Southborough what is it? Southborough Town Southborough Remote Meetings is the name of the thing. And if you guys want to watch, you can see what we look like live, but I'm not going to do that because it's weird. I'm staring at myself delayed. Anyway, you go there, our meeting is posted from today's date. You can just look at it, and there's on the right side of the screen, there's typically a closed captioning on the bottom. It's a closed captioning, has everything written down.
So go to YouTube and then look for Southborough Town Meetings.
Southborough Remote Meetings. And you're going to see the town logo on there. And then you're going to just see the meeting from today's date, which is the 24th. And then it's right there. It takes a little bit of time to process. So you may not see it in an hour, but you might see it in a day.
All right, I'll try it. If I need help, I'll holler.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to help with that.
Do you just click on closed captioning and it'll pull everything together?
I believe it has just I believe it just gives you a transcript on the side.
Okay, transcript.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
it's like a transcript on the side. It's like one of those what do you call it? It's one of the ADA requirements, so that way somebody that would have a hearing impairment or something can follow along.
Lisa, there's a little sprocket thing at the bottom, or there's a CC thing at the bottom of the YouTube picture. You click on that gives you the closed captions. And then over to the right somewhere, there are 3 little dots that you have an expanded menu. And one of those is copy the transcript or something. And that transcript shows up on the right side of the YouTube video. And then you can simply click and drag across that to select it and copy it into a Word document.
Thank you.
It's messy, but sometimes it's very helpful in terms of starting with that and then whacking out pieces and doing a little editing versus trying to start from scratch again. So,
thank you.
Sure.
Thanks,
Very
Sam.
helpful.
Everybody ready to adjourn?
Yes.
Let's go.
The show of hands.
Seconding.
Everybody's showing their thumbs up to adjourn. Another great night, folks.
Yeah.
Great
I
info.
applaud everybody on their patience dealing with everybody, and got some good insight.
When this is all over and we're no longer a committee, we should all get together.
And drink.
And hopefully be celebrating having gotten something passed.
Yeah, we might.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a great night, guys.
You too.
Good
Good
night,
night.
everybody.